From the tribe of the trolls to the empire of the elves, this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Inspiration from the Capture of Smilodon. How does a refrigerator reduce the pressure of a high temperature, high pressure liquid? When I was a kid playing with water, if I opened the valve and blocked the pressure difference between the inside and outside of a part of the pipe with my fingers, the water would splash out. This process should also be considered as reducing pressure, right? So, through throttling, can pressure reduction be achieved? Well, let's call it a pressure reducing valve. So, the process should be low temperature, low pressure steam compression zone, high temperature, high pressure steam heat dissipation zone, medium temperature, high pressure liquid pressure reducing valve, low temperature, low pressure semi-liquid. Semi-steam refrigeration zone, low temperature, low pressure steam compression zone, that is, compression / condensation / pressure reduction / evaporation, for refrigeration cycle processes. In addition, there is also a refrigerant. I think it's called Freon. It seems to be an outdated thing, and I only remember the name. Then think about what kind of characteristics the refrigerant should have. First, the chemical properties should be stable, preferably non-toxic and non-corrosive. Second, considering the volume of the compression zone, the unit volume of the refrigerant should be relatively high. Third, the density should be small to reduce the working loss of the compression zone. Finally, the heat conductivity and heat release capacity should be high. M feels useless. What can be easily obtained now is water. Has anyone used water as a refrigerant in their previous life? By the way, carbon dioxide can also be obtained relatively easily. If other problems can be solved, use these two experiments first. Compression zone. Let me think about what the working state should be like. Baki quickly entered meditation and began to imagine the working mode of the compression zone in his mind. The compressor is the most complicated. A rectangular cylinder, a compression piston attached to the wall, and two inlets and outlets on the top throttle valve. Hourglass-shaped pipe plus capillary should be enough. The heat dissipation condenser is a bit difficult, and the heat conductivity must be considered. The shape is simple, isn't it a fence? The evaporative cooler and the heat sink should be similar, and the heat conductivity should also be considered. In meditation, except for the compressor part, which was too complicated and only roughly understood, the other parts were basically logically self-consistent. Coming back from meditation, recalling the refrigeration cycle simulated in his mind before, Baki said softly, materials and energy are the biggest obstacles. Without metal mines and rubber, we can't even build the most basic steam engine, let alone other things. Just then, a knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Baki opened the door and looked out in confusion. Standing outside the door were the tired-looking Great Witch Doctor and the Middle Witch Doctor. You two witch doctors are back. Are you not injured? No, it's just that the beast was too cunning. We spent too much energy to catch it. The Middle Witch Doctor dusted off the dust on his body and complained. It's no big deal. Do you want to come and take a look? Haven't you seen a saber-tooth before? The Great Witch Doctor seemed to have heard something from the Middle Witch Doctor. He carefully observed Baki's mental state and invited carefully. Okay, let's go take a look. Baki, who had not been able to crawl out of the bottleneck, did not refuse the Witch Doctor's kindness and followed him directly. The saber-tooth was locked in a square container covered with animal skin. When Baki and the others arrived, it had been moved to the entrance of the basement not far from the Witch Doctor's courtyard. Looking at the warriors' appearance at the moment, it seems that they are planning to lock the container in the basement together. The only old witch doctor present before seemed to have just cast a spell to widen the entrance of the basement and was now blessing the warriors in charge of carrying it with low-level strength, endurance and other buffs. Seeing Baki coming, the old witch doctor pointed to the container that was half the size of the house and said, "Smooth the base so that they can push it in." Baki nodded and used magic to make the bottom of the cage extremely smooth. He walked forward and touched it. He felt that it was as smooth as the ice surface, and then he was satisfied. From here, he could already vaguely hear the movement coming from the cage. He carefully reached out, lifted the fur covering it, and glanced inside along the light. What caught his eye was a beast that was more similar to the saber-toothed tiger in his previous life, but now it was trapped tightly by vines and seemed to be stunned. It was snoring and sleeping without any domineering vine. The moment Baki saw the saber-toothed tiger, he didn't feel too shocked. Even though it was a super monster that was as tall as his chest and 4 meters long without the tail, at this moment, it didn't seem to be more attractive than the thought that flashed through his mind when he saw the vines. Baki put down the fur in his hand immediately and said, "I thought of something, I'll go back first." Then he turned and left in a hurry. The 3 witch doctors sighed with concern, but did not persuade them much, just stayed and continued their unfinished work silently. Hurrying back to the meditation room, Baki couldn't wait to sort out the fleeting thoughts just now. Vine. Material spell photosynthesis. He lowered his body, facing the ground with his palm, and chanted, "Magic transformation, plant synthesis preparation, starting position, 3 centimeters in front of the palm preparation, standard specification shaping, target toughness 130%, hardness 120% preparation, front, standard speed extension preparation." After the chanting ended, under the interaction between the inside and the outside, a vine broke out of the ground at a fast speed and stretched in the predetermined direction. Baki picked it up in his hand and slowly felt the various characteristics of the vine. After casting the vine spell, the vines will break out of the ground. We can control their growth speed and direction according to our needs. Even the hardness and toughness of the vines are within the control range of the spell. Plants are the most direct users of solar energy in simple cognition. The reason why our plant system spells can grow quickly is that in a certain rune group, we can definitely separate out the runes related to photosynthesis. Similarly, the controllability of toughness, hardness, etc. can also explain that in the shaping stage, there are related rune groups that have been hidden. If we can dig out the details of the rune groups related to photosynthesis, toughness, hardness, etc., instead of just using the plant shaping rune group in a general way as it is now, the precision of control will be greatly improved. Once the precision exceeds a certain critical point, there will be many things that can be done. Photosynthesis power pool, hydraulic vapor compression system, leaf condensation and heat dissipation structure, plant vein decompression capillary flow channel, trunk cavity cooling chamber. As long as I can control every part of the plant, from its characteristics to its appearance, and make it grow into the shape I need, wouldn't that be the so-called fully automatic plant refrigerator? This is just the starting point. Wood that can conduct electricity, wood that can withstand high temperatures, and wood that is harder than steel can also be imagined in the plant industry. Yes, I was too obsessed with my past life before. There was a rich treasure in front of me, but I insisted on sticking to the methods of my past life. Point that can't be said. If I didn't think about my past life, how could I efficiently use the treasure I have here? So, the two should complement each other, and we must continue to pursue the knowledge of our past lives. Chapter 27. Changes in the tribe and prospects after success. The idea was thus determined. Knowing that this was not the amount of work that he could complete alone, Baki decisively chose to seek help from the 3 witch doctors. After generally introducing the relevant ideas, a new stage of concentrated research began. Except for a few daily tasks, the 4 witch doctors all entered a seclusion state. Perhaps because the questions this time were too difficult, the witch doctor's seclusion gradually became a normal state. During this period, the education of the little trolls was also slowly transferred. After a period of personal teaching, the witch doctor selected a group of advanced element in various subjects through examinations. After that, they gave these advanced trolls a period of intensive teaching, and then threw the teaching materials and lesson plans to them, allowing them to lead the rich to the poor while self-studying, and also take on the teaching work of the remaining little trolls. The tribe's literacy work was also in full swing after the chief was blessed with more than 10 kinds of spells, and performed a hand-torn saber-toothed beast in public. The yearning for power is the most simple sentiment of the troll warriors. In addition to the stimulation of the mouth-watering barbecue at the bonfire meeting, their attitude towards learning has also become more proactive. The changes in the tribe are far more than these. Various strange and normal changes are appearing one after another. For example, the flame bathhouse is one of the new customs that is both strange and logical. The witch doctor once mentioned that flames may have the effect of sterilization and purification. What is bacteria? The warriors don't know. It seems to be some kind of dirty thing. In this case, sterilization and purification are not just becoming clean. So, the warriors who heard that flames can make the body clean immediately thought of new uses. It is dangerous and troublesome to take a bath at the water source every time. Since flames can have the same effect, why don't everyone just take a flame bath? So, they specially built a flame bathhouse so that they can take a bath in the tribe with peace of mind from now on. It is worth mentioning that the troll warriors seem to like the numbness brought by the burning of flames. It is said that soaking in it can well relieve the fatigue accumulated for a day. What about the relatively delicate skin of the little trolls? Actually, it's no problem. As long as the little trolls grow to a certain level, they can take a shower without getting hurt. It just might hurt a little, but it doesn't matter. It's the training of perseverance and a nutrient for the growth of warriors. With this reason, the warriors simply skipped the troublesome task of taking the little trolls to take a shower together, which they had to organize occasionally before. What about the smaller little trolls who can't even take a shower? Go to hell, they were not taken to take a shower before. Isn't it the same as nothing has changed now? Don't make trouble for nothing, we are busy taking a bath. The most obvious change brought about by this atmosphere, in addition to the fact that the smell in the tribe has been improved a lot, is that the consumption of fuel has become more and more huge every day. But the warriors don't care about this. They are not responsible for the process of collecting firewood and burning charcoal, so they have no relevant concept at all. As a result, the remaining playtime of the young trolls every day, such as noon, is quickly filled with work such as collecting firewood. In addition, the research on animal husbandry has also achieved initial results. Among the various target animals collected earlier, the warriors successfully raised two types of animals, large and small, in a centralized breeding environment. The large one is about half the weight of a mature troll. The small one is lighter than a troll baby. Although it cannot be called completely domesticated, it is far from being able to replace hunting due to limitations in feed, heart maturation speed, gestation period, etc. But it is indeed a direction for progress. Given time, it will surely fundamentally change the survival mode of the trolls. There is another change that must be mentioned. During this period, several young trolls have obtained the most preliminary spell casting ability through meditation, and have switched to visualization meditation method, and began to condense meditation space. This is almost the number of witch doctor apprentices that several generations of trolls have accumulated in the past, which shows that the geometric meditation method is indeed successful. In addition, it is worth mentioning that these new apprentices are almost all advanced element before. Unlike other teachers who are also responsible for teaching, they are not reciting lesson plans and knowledge points. Instead, they are indeed trying to understand the knowledge. This may explain why other teachers who were transformed from adult warriors and who also tried meditation failed to become witch doctor apprentices. Of course, if this kind of thinking goes deeper, it may become a debate similar to which came first, the chicken or the egg. But what is certain is that within a certain age, it is indeed possible to exercise mental strength through meditation, thereby increasing the success rate of witch doctors. Time passed quickly, and when Blade Fang was not much shorter than the warriors, crossed the adulthood, and was about to enter the longest and most powerful life cycle of the troll's life, the prime period, the research finally achieved decisive results. The 4 witch doctors gathered again, and behind them, there were also new apprentices accumulated during this period. At this time, whether it was the witch doctors or the apprentices, their attention was focused on a strange tree in front of them. The dense and tangled root system, due to its rapid formation, pushed up a large area of soil and accumulated around the trunk. The crown of the tree spread out like a dandelion at the top, and the palm-sized leaves were concentrated as much as possible on the outer surface, thereby increasing the area that could be exposed to sunlight. The trunk was short and thick, and one side was vaguely like a door. Baki walked forward, grasped the handle of the door, and pulled it outward, and the door was actually opened. The pale white cold mist overflowed in an instant. In the haze, the grid-like structure on the inside and the wall could be seen, and the source of the mist was there. Baki's face was full of excitement. He stretched out his hand and carefully touched the frost on the grid. At this moment, he clearly understood that the hard work of waiting for the trolls was finally rewarded. The excitement became stronger and stronger, surging to the throat and the corners of the eyes. Finally, they gathered into shouts and tears and rushed out. Oh, success. The other witch doctors finally breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this. Because they did not fully realize what the refrigerator itself meant, or what the problem solved during the research process meant. Although they were also happy at the moment, it was more out of emotions such as relief and hard work was rewarded, and the degree of excitement was far less than that of Baki. Therefore, all the participants just wanted to take a fire bath and have a good rest for a while. This period of research may not seem too long compared to the life cycle of the trolls, but the high intensity thinking work still makes them feel extremely tired, and it is time to relax for a while. Baki is different. He thought of more. Better weapons, better production configurations, and better storage methods. Before the new critical point comes, the population will no longer be a burden and food will be used more effectively. This means that plundering will become profitable. War will soon become a fertile soil for the growth of the tribe. Collection. Leave a message. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Fruit Trees and Steel Trees. Blade didn't tell other trolls about the idea of plunder and war at the first time. Before the tribe developed to a certain extent, it would only scare them. Therefore, for a long time, the tribe remained calm. At least from the outside, it seemed that there was no change. Hunting and gathering activities were always maintained. Occasionally, there would be a traditional friendly match with the surrounding tribes to grab some useless metalloids. But this was just on the surface. Everything was changing imperceptibly. In the tribe, strange trees were born one after another by the witch doctors. Most of them were the refrigerated trees that were previously studied. A small part was the fruit trees cultivated using the derivative technology of the former. In the process of developing the refrigerated trees before, the witch doctors dug out many plant-related runes. Although some of the runes became useless or even obstacles in the development of the refrigerator trees, they did not hinder their ability to shine and heat in other directions. For example, the part of the rune corresponding to fruit. Plants have different forms of seeds, and the fruits that the trolls collect on a daily basis are also a manifestation of this. The witch doctors use magic to grow plants. When the plants grow to a certain extent, they stop most of their growth ability and use the nutrients that were originally used to grow thicker and taller to cultivate fruits. This is not enough. The fruit part of the fruit becomes large and solid under cultivation, while the seed part has been castrated with many self-preservation abilities that originally evolved to adapt to wild growth. For example, they used to need to be transported to distant places by animals to find land suitable for growth. So structures such as anti-digestion and fur hooks were born. But now, these are no longer needed. The fruits will be harvested immediately after they are ripe, and any overly complicated seed parts have become unnecessary burdens. Because for the tribe, how to use limited nutrients to cultivate enough rich fruits is what should be considered. Based on these studies, the fruit tree was developed. It seems that most progress will not be isolated. With the emergence of the fruit tree, the need for space became inevitable, but the tribe was already crowded enough, and it was impossible to create an open space immediately. Naturally, the trolls turned their attention to the forest. They wanted to cut down all the trees around, and turn them into charcoal, or cut them into materials for preservation. However, the existing open space alone has slowly appeared after countless generations of transformation by trolls. How could it be possible to develop the surrounding area in a short time? No matter how strong the trolls are, they can't pull out those thick trees that have grown for who knows how many years with bare chests. Therefore, the improvement of tools has become an urgent need. The troll tribe naturally has no saws, but they now have magic. it has become possible to change the characteristics of plants, at least to a certain extent. The concept of saws and axes was proposed by Blade Fang and created by witch doctors through plant spells. The idle warriors who got new tools and relieved the hunting pressure because of the refrigerated tree began to cut wood happily. But soon, these warriors tasted something wrong. Damn, logging tools are better than weapons? How can this be possible? With this idea, they soon thought of updating their weapons and made requests one after another. In the past, they could not hunt a large amount of food at one time, which was not only affected by hunting efficiency, but also by the natural limitation of food storage. Now, with the emergence of refrigerator trees, the tribe has made a breakthrough in food storage. The restriction on hunting is naturally left with pure efficiency issues, and the efficiency problem can be partially solved by technical means. Therefore, the warrior's demand for weapon innovation is completely reasonable and necessary at this time, and the witch doctors naturally cannot refuse. Then provide it. Hardwood javelins, giant swords, giant shields, spears. These original or newly emerging weapon categories were made and distributed by witch doctors. The warriors got new weapons, and their efficiency did improve. They brought back a lot more prey each time. But soon the witch doctors found that weapons were different from tools like saws and axes. They wore out too quickly and too seriously. After several battles, only a few of the spears thrown out and the swords used to cut the beasts were intact. There was no other way. If they were broken, they would be repaired, and if they were gone, they would be replaced. In this way, the warriors were naturally satisfied, and their enthusiasm was getting higher and higher. But it was not the same for the witch doctors. It was okay once or twice, but over time, their physical strength was drained again and again, and their time was gradually occupied. They gradually realized that the current plan was not advisable. What should we do? The way Blade Fang solved the problem has been deeply rooted in people's hearts, so they continued to study it. First, they selected a tree that was excellent in hardness and toughness, took its seeds from scratch, and cultivated them according to different plans. In the meantime, they accelerated its growth rate through spells, and at the same time, they continuously strengthened its hardness and toughness through runes, and tried their best to find a balance between the two aspects. In this way, they finally got the steel tree and the most suitable material for turning into weapons at this stage. But this is not enough. No matter how good the steel tree is, due to the natural properties of the tree, the processing ability of the tribe, and other reasons, the part suitable for becoming a weapon is limited to the heart of the tree. As for other parts, due to structural defects or shape factors, they can only become scraps. Therefore, if you want to obtain materials, you can only cut down the tree to get the core, which is extremely poor in utilization. This means that the witch doctors still have to spend time to promote birth and change. This not only takes a lot of time, but also adds several processing procedures similar to logging. For the tribe, it is better to use weapons made directly by the witch doctors. Faced with this situation, a smart witch doctor apprentice, who seemed to be influenced by the high separation of the functional areas of the refrigerator tree, proposed whether this design concept could be applied to the steel tree. When he mentioned this, the other witch doctors suddenly realized and made a more radical change, integrating the weapon forming stage into the steel tree. In other words, the steel tree will not only be responsible for providing materials, but also take over the troublesome work such as grinding and splicing, and truly become a tree that can grow weapons. In this way, under the influence of the design concept of try not to cause trouble to yourself as much as possible, the new Steel Tree 2.0 was established and succeeded after a period of research. The strength and toughness of most areas of the 2.0 version of the steel tree have been adjusted back to the scope of normal plants, but the trunk has been transformed into an openable growth chamber. Most of the nutrients obtained by the tree will be used to manufacture weapons in the growth chamber, and after the weapons are mature, they can be opened and taken out without harming the tree itself. In this way, nutrients are concentrated in the usable and renewable parts, making it no longer a disposable thing, and the utilization efficiency problem is also solved. In addition, although it is quite slow, the entire steel tree 2.0 can continue to grow taller and thicker over time because it retains a certain growth ability, and the growth chamber will also increase its own production capacity as other functional areas grow, even if this growth cycle will be quite long. In fact, at this point, in terms of current needs, the research is already successful enough. But some witch doctors are not satisfied, and they have set their sights on a new direction: how to make the changed traits manifest in the next generation of plants. Chapter 29, Meetings and Legends. This research direction is not unimportant. At present, all the functional trees of the tribe, including the refrigerator tree, fruit tree, the newly developed steel tree, and the weapon tree derived from it, can be said to be disposable. They are either castrated to reproduce, such as the refrigerator tree, or the next generation will not inherit the ability of its parents after being artificially transformed, and will only become an ordinary plant. This has greatly restricted the tribe's application of functional trees. Especially for fruit trees, the demand for fruits as food in a sense must be huge. But at this stage, the improved fruit trees can only be obtained through witch doctors, and the relevant spells are named higher plant transformation. There are high thresholds in terms of rune understanding, rune application, precision, self-mental hypnosis, and even magic power. There are not many witch doctors who can use them independently. Therefore, there is a contradiction between the tribe's demand for the increase of functional trees and the higher witch doctor's demand for private personal time. It was in this context that the great witch doctor took the lead in gathering several new witch doctors and witch doctor apprentices who were also interested in this, and started research in this area. Putting aside this destined long research, after the basic needs in terms of weapons and food reserves were met, many things that could only be pondered in Bakker's mind before could be gradually brought out and talked about. The small broken conference room, where several witch doctors held a seminar, gathered new and old witch doctors, as well as more witch doctor apprentices. Backy. Ahem. I must have something to call everyone here. Let's talk about it. The old witch doctor was already quite old, his voice was short of breath, and from time to time he would cough like a bellows. But his eyes were extremely relieved, especially when facing this room full of juniors. His face was full of unstoppable joy, and his trembling hands on the crutches seemed to have more strength. The life of a troll can be roughly divided into 3 stages, namely growth period, prime age, and old age. Among them, the prime age is the longest, much longer than the growth period and old age combined. After a stable prime of life and entering old age, the physical function of the troll will experience a cliff-like decline. However, this decline will not directly make the troll old and unbearable, but will maintain the functional stability within the limit again when it reaches a certain critical value. The strength and duration of this critical point depend on the overdraft of the troll's body when he was young. In general, the more often the warrior regenerates broken limbs and fights overload, the lower the physical strength and the shorter the stable period in old age. And the witch doctor, if he does not encounter a situation where he needs to spend his life to cast a spell, both the physical strength and the duration of the stable period are generally significantly longer. But in any case, the old troll is still strong enough to carry out intensive labor such as collecting fruits and processing meat. Only when death is really approaching, the troll's body will show the symptom of being unable to sit steadily. For example, the old witch doctor today, even if he is just sitting, he must use a cane to barely support his body. This means that the final death is approaching, and the old witch doctor's time is running out. Alas, everyone will inevitably usher in this day. Sighing silently, Backy no longer thought about it, and said, after countless days of hard work, the tribe can be said to have taken shape. As he spoke, he saw the young troll's expressions of pride mixed with admiration. Well, the tribe's progress is obvious to all, and we should be proud. However, there have been too many praises on weekdays. Today, I don't want to sing praises for myself or anyone else, but I want to say something to spoil the fun. He paused slightly, giving the young trolls with confused eyes some time to react, and then continued, I must remind you that our foundation is unstable and can hardly withstand the test of nature. Hearing this, the reactions of the people present were completely different. The 3 veteran witch doctors were thoughtful, but the other young trolls who had grown up were a little indifferent. Of course, this indifference was not out of a thought like my lord. Times have changed, but they really trusted Baki in the changes he led. Those countless achievements made these younger generations firmly believe that under Baki's leadership, the tribe could not be destroyed by any force. Concentrate your thoughts, and listen to my story first. Baki glanced at them and spoke again. A long time ago, until the old witch doctor was still a child, the Ya tribe did not actually live on the land it is now. Deep in the Black Forest, quite far away from the current tribe, that is a more fertile land. There, an ancient tribe developed for countless years and finally became a huge force with thousands of strong warriors. Thousands of strong troll warriors. Do you know what kind of power this is? Old witch doctor, do you still remember that tribe? Yes, I still remember. When I was a child, a hunting team had a conflict with us, and several warriors died. Baki looked at the hard work of the old witch doctor while speaking, and couldn't bear to take over the conversation again. Well, you told me before that several members of the hunting team escaped, and later led 200 fully armed warriors to retaliate, constantly hunting teams and snatching prey, and finally forced us to migrate to this corner now. Yes, they are too powerful. Well, you see, without a refrigerator tree, they can support so many warriors, and send 200 core forces to cause external harassment. What does this mean? Who can tell me? This shows that they may have mastered a way to obtain food that is far more efficient than hunting. A young witch doctor apprentice responded. You're right. I'm sure everyone has experienced the impact of the change in the way food is obtained. This is also true for other tribes. Look at their attitude towards the dead and injured tribesmen, and how they dealt with them afterwards. Whether it's the speed of revenge or the ruthlessness and accuracy of the means, it proves that they have indeed left barbarism to some extent, and entered a certain stage of civilization. Such a tribe should never be underestimated. Even if they don't have a systematic force of spellcasters, who knows how many witch doctors they have who cast spells with magic crystals? Even the woolen number of warriors alone are enough to destroy us now. But, such a behemoth was wiped out almost overnight. The ruins were covered with bloody footprints of monsters, and scattered with fragments of troll debris. A tribe with thousands of warriors just disappeared like that. Blade Fang looked around at the confused expressions on the young faces and said in a serious tone, and this is the eternal threat from the Black Forest, the beast tide. Legend has it that when a tribe grows to the point where it affects the balance of nature, the revenge of the Black Forest will strike and wipe out the greedy natural takers. Now tell me, when faced with a beast tide consisting of hundreds or even thousands of magical beasts of various levels, can we resist it? Faced with the charge of thousands of warriors, can we resist it? The young people wanted to say yes, but since they were sitting here, it meant that they were not reckless. At this moment, no one could give such an obviously unreasonable answer. Okay, why are you scaring them? Tell me what you think. The witch doctor, who had seen many storms, just smiled and stroked his beard. He felt that legends and beast tides should be viewed separately, and legends were too vague to be useful. As for the beast tide, there was no need to worry too much. There were not enough magical beasts in this corner to form a beast tide. Only when the legend was true did we need to worry. However, even if the legend was true, the current size of the tribe did not qualify for natural revenge. Therefore, it was completely unnecessary to worry too much about these issues now. Of course, the fact that the witch doctor waited until now to interrupt also shows part of his attitude. First, it is okay to prepare for a rainy day. Second, these little guys are indeed a little too proud. Chapter 30 Expansion Policy. Okay, then I'll tell you. First of all, the tribe must continue to grow stronger. This must be everyone's common wish. The trolls nodded in agreement. No one did not want this to happen. However, even if there is no concrete evidence for the revenge of the Black Forest will, the precedents of the ancient overlords tell us that there were indeed powerful tribes that were destroyed by the beast tide. It is better to believe it than not to believe it. Therefore, linear growth step by step is not advisable, because we cannot be sure whether the revenge, when we cross the line, will really come. Under this premise, our strength must be jumpy and hidden. How can we continue to grow stronger while maintaining ourselves within a certain limit? This will be a new thinking we face. Therefore, expansion must be expanded, but because of the reasons mentioned above, this expansion cannot rely solely on force, at least in the later stages. How to do it? I have a few ideas. You listen to them first, and then we can discuss whether they are feasible or not. First, annex several neighboring tribes to enrich the population base of the tribe. This is to enable us to obtain basic deterrence visible to the naked eye and the foundation needed for our own development. Secondly, work hard to build our soft power. Blade Fang Witch Doctor, what is soft power? A young man raised a question. Baki turned his gaze to the questioner, nodded and responded, it's good to have questions, but the premise is that you have to think about them first. So, before I tell you my answer, tell me your guess first. The young man scratched his protruding fangs, and after a moment, he carefully answered, well, since it is soft, it should be the opposite of hard. If hard power can be extended to the number of warriors, the strength of witch doctors, and the number of people in the tribe, then soft power is writing, technology, etc. Well, very good, whether right or wrong. Questions that have been thought about can be valuable, and you other little guys should do the same. Baki, who has entered his prime, has a very oppressive figure. In addition, those who are sitting there are all cultured people, and they understand his contribution to the tribe more deeply. Therefore, his words are very effective. Whether it is a new witch doctor or a young apprentice, they all nodded in agreement. If the power of the tribe is embodied, I would like to divide it into two aspects, hard power and soft power. As for hard power, Yi's previous guess was partly correct. I define it as combat effectiveness, resources, and technical capabilities. They refer to the number of warriors, and whether they are strong, the size of the hunting and gathering grounds we occupy, and whether there is enough food, our research on runes and the various applications derived from them. I classify all of these as hard power. As for soft power, I would like to propose a new concept here, culture. That is the sum of our existing, inherited, created, and developed inner spirit. The so-called soft power is the attraction that comes from this. What we think is beautiful and ugly, what we think is right and wrong, the language and writing we use, our system, everything including these must make other tribes agree with it from the bottom of their hearts, and naturally yearn for it. Let's imagine this, one day, when we raise our arms and call for action, all trolls, even if their rulers disagree, will voluntarily become part of us. When we identify their rulers as evil, they are willing to overthrow them immediately. When we are threatened, they empathize with us and are willing to fight for us spontaneously. What will that be like? In this way, we can maintain the power of our headquarters within a certain limit, while spreading our power in a unified way. Can this really be done? Even with the current level of trust, the trolls present are skeptical about this concept, and there is even more skepticism. There is no way, no matter how smart they are, the limitations of their knowledge are inevitable. I think it's possible. Let's take a step back. The premise of having this kind of attraction is that our own civilization has reached a certain level, and developing civilization is our original plan, isn't it? On this basis, no matter what new purpose is injected, as long as it does not violate development itself, it can be tried. What do you think? The trolls looked solemn and thought for a long time in silence. However, perhaps it was the unparalleled future possibilities mentioned by Baki, or perhaps the plan itself would not cause fundamental damage to the tribe. So, the trolls relaxed their expressions and turned their eyes to the other three witch doctors at the top, except Baki. Feeling the gaze, the old, big, and middle witch doctors looked at each other, and they knew it was time to express their opinions. The youngest and most radical of the old witch doctors, the middle witch doctor, spoke first. Although I think it would be best to just push through it, the beast tide is indeed a factor that must be considered. So, I agree. Secondly, the great witch doctor's voice, which was tinged with worry, but seemed somewhat relieved, rang out, I don't like war, but as the tribe grows, the eyes of the younger generations will one day turn to the outside. Now that we have a softer plan, let's do it. Finally, the old witch doctor made an unusually simple statement, I'm almost dying. Ahem, the future is yours. Blade stroked the old witch doctor's back to ease the pain of his cough, and whispered, how could that be? You're trying to be lazy and throw everything to us. Haha. Okay. Ahem. Old man, I'll hold on a little longer. The beating continued. What was said earlier was just the tone. The development of culture and civilization are not simple things. There are more things that need to be slowly explored through discussion and practice. First of all, it is the construction of the system. The current ruling model of the tribe has great hidden dangers. The chief is essentially the leader of the warriors, but now in the tribe, apart from the warriors, there are teenagers who yearn to become warriors, or old trolls who were once warriors. This situation has allowed the influence of the chief to be infinitely expanded. It's okay now, but what if one day in the future, the ambition of the position of chief also goes further with its influence? To put it bluntly, is wisdom going to be overcome by brute force? What's more, we not only have wisdom, we have strength, and we will inevitably resist. What do you think? If we resist, what will be the impact on the tribe? After hearing Baki's series of speeches, the witch doctors and witch doctor apprentices couldn't help but start to associate their inevitable reactions in that situation with the possible consequences. In the end, the faces of almost all spellcasters couldn't help but become solemn. Bladderfang witch doctor, do you dare to do that, chieftain? Knowing how powerful we are? The great witch doctor asked doubtfully, which was also what many trolls were thinking. Great witch doctor, power is a hotbed for ambition and blindness. I don't want to bet the future of the tribe on whether other trolls are wise. What do you think? Chapter 31 Discussion on institutional reform. That may be the case, but have you ever thought about it? The current chief has not made any mistakes. How are you going to restrict him, or even remove him? As soon as he finished speaking, the worried witch doctor asked again without waiting for his answer. Besides, from what you said, Baki, it seems that you want to put all the power of the tribe in the hands of witch doctors. Is that right? Baki nodded without hesitation. He thought it was right. Decisions are made by wisdom. Is there any problem? Then have you ever thought about the feelings of other members of the tribe? Now, the chief, as the de facto ruler, at least serves as the representative of all non-spellcaster tribesmen. Even if he does not have this title, according to tradition, the chief is indeed qualified. But when you clearly return the power to the witch doctor and make the chief the doctor under us, will the tribesmen feel divided? Think that the warriors have become a marginal group in decision making, and thus become disunited. If we continue to maintain our tradition, we will still have a great say, and the warriors will also maintain centripetal force towards the tribe. For example, has the chief ever unreasonably rejected our suggestions? And have the warriors ever been negligent in their execution? So, can't we maintain the status quo? Just as Baki fell into deep thought after hearing what he said, and most of the other trolls were also thinking about it, the witch doctor took over. Course chief, I think you are too conservative. You keep talking about tradition. Is this tradition set by us? Are others willing to maintain this tradition with you? Just now Baki said that power is a hotbed for ambition and blindness, and I think it makes sense. What if one day the chief is unwilling to follow the tradition with us? You are just assuming. The chief has always been wise. Haha, why do you have to pretend to be confused? You know that what we are talking about has never been limited to a certain chief, but refers to the countless chiefs who will be in the future, and refers to that position. The current chief is wise? Indeed, I don't deny it, but so what? Does this prove that future chiefs will be wise? Will there be a day when a chief is finally fed up with the chattering of us witch doctors and wants to seize all power in fact or in name? What about us? Should we become his spellcaster guards and advisors, or take up arms to resist? Now, the opportunity to completely eradicate this possibility is right in front of us. Do you have to wait until the moment comes, until both sides have gained enough power to destroy the entire tribe, before you are willing to change that damn tradition? So, I support Baki's proposal to clarify and limit the power of the chief and completely bring the source of power into the hands of our witch doctors. And you, think about it carefully too. When the moment comes, it won't be easy to make changes. Sharpfang, you can't use things that haven't happened to support your point of view. What's more, isn't it possible that our witch doctors will be blinded by power? Come on, even if wisdom is blinded, it is far better than blind barbarism. You are just weak. If you don't take advantage of now, when the unified will of the warriors has not yet sprouted, to completely determine the source of power and responsibility, when will you wait? Wait until the spear is against our throats? Okay, why are the two witch doctors still angry after discussing this? Seeing that the conversation was becoming increasingly confrontational, Baki hurriedly tried to persuade the two to stop. The more you argue, the clearer the truth becomes. If the discussion turns into mutual accusations, then there is no point. Seeing that the two sides did not speak again, Baki stood up and spoke again. After the speeches of the two witch doctors, I was able to better sort out my own views. First of all, I want to make it clear that any changes we make to the tribe should be based on the pursuit of civilization. Then, on the issue of chief, we should think about whether the current system is contrary to civilization. I think it is. What should M call the current system? Bloody gladiatorial system, unlimitedly ability system? No matter how well a chief does, as long as a warrior surpasses him in martial arts, he will face the challenge. Death and beheading seem to have become the merit or tombstone of every chief. This is ridiculous and barbaric, and must be changed. The standard for a chief should not be martial arts, but wisdom and ability. That's one. Second, the scope of the chief's authority and responsibilities is vague and broad. This position seems to be able to control everything, but also seems to be in charge of nothing. As mentioned before, this is a hidden danger. There must be a broad and consistent understanding among the entire tribe on its scope of authority and responsibility, and it must be fixed in some form. Third, I have emphasized the relationship between power, ambition, and blindness several times, and the position of chief is the best linkage point between them. Therefore, the chief must be mobile, and must not be allowed to have mutual achievements with any troll out of ambition, but at the same time, for the continuity of tribal governance, it is necessary to ensure that ongoing things do not passively stagnate every once in a while. Therefore, the stability of the position of chief should also be considered. So, I think a term system can be introduced. For example, a troll can only be a chief for one prime year, and there must be restrictions on re-election, total number of terms in office, etc. What do you think? As soon as Baki finished speaking, the witch doctor raised a question. I think it is feasible to use wisdom instead of force. But how can we do it? In the past, if you wanted to become a chief, you just had to win in gladiatorial combat. But how can this wisdom be demonstrated? How can a wise chief take office? How can we guarantee the decision-making power of our witch doctors? I only have preliminary ideas in this regard, and I need your consultation. First of all, the people of the tribe must have such an understanding. Wisdom is the best driving force to lead the tribe forward. And this requires starting with education, through comparisons between ancient and modern times, and education on values, to change the cognition of the people, especially the little trolls. We need to change their vision for the future from I want to be a brave warrior to I want to be a wise witch doctor. This will not only change the people's expectations of the chief, but also bring us a certain basis of public opinion. When the people have such expectations of the chief, it will naturally become a matter of course to make rigid requirements on the wisdom of the position of chief and to determine it in the form of rules. And when wisdom has a similar popular support, it will be possible to establish a permanent deliberative body that can determine the direction of the tribe's development. In my imagination, this body will be established and controlled by witch doctors. It can be called the Rune Council, the Wisdom Council, or something else. It is mainly responsible for controlling the general direction of the tribe's future development, and the chief is the executor of specific affairs. Old witch doctor, sharp-toothed witch doctor, rough-toothed witch doctor, and everyone. What do you think of this idea? Well, I think it's good. Chief Council. The middle witch doctor thought for a while and said, in your imagination, these chiefs and council are still separate, right? Yes. Then do you think this will work? Simply merge the two. The chief is renamed the speaker, and the power and responsibilities are set as the leader and representative of the council, and it is born from the council members. The ruling power is also indirectly obtained by the council. Wouldn't this be safer? Chapter 32. Strategy and the other type mother troll. As for this fanged witch doctor, I think we only need to control the general direction. If we really have to govern ourselves, it would be a bit of putting the cart before the horse for the witch doctor, right? We should focus our energy on studying magic. Warriors are in charge of politics and witch doctors are in charge of decision making. What's the difference from before? How can there be no difference? The clarity of rights and responsibilities, the limitation of scope, and the support of justice are enough. Oh, this can't stop the ambitious. Fanged witch doctor, ambition exists under any circumstances. We can't completely erase it. We can only rely on the system to put it in a cage. But we can obviously. Ahem, fangs, blades, let me, an old man, say something. Old witch doctor, you say. Old witch doctor, persuade him. If he wants to change, he must do it in one step. What's the difference between changing half and keeping the other half? And Coarse Teeth's proposal. Weak. Too weak. Don't get excited. My brain is not working. I've been listening to you guys discussing for a long time, but my thinking speed can't keep up. I finally thought of something. Don't scare me away again. Oh, you said. Sharp Fang scratched his fangs and said a little embarrassedly, what you three are considering are all real problems. However, Coarse Fang is too conservative, Sharp Fang is too radical, and Blade Tooth is too idealistic. I won't comment on Coarse Fang's ideas. Although Sharp Fang's criticism is extreme, it still has substance. You are right. It is unknown what the Great Witch is thinking, but he humbly agreed. Well, and Sharp Fang, I have lived this life, and only understood one thing, when I'm old. Are you interested in listening? Old witch doctor, you say. In this world, nothing can be solved once and for all. Ambition is like this, and so is the distribution of power. You said before, the unified will of the warriors has not yet sprouted. I agree with you, but can you suppress it forever? Can't you? As long as, cough cough cough. A violent cough interrupted the old witch doctor's words. Blade Tooth quickly supported his arm to prevent the old witch doctor from being unable to sit up due to the shock. Huff, sorry, I'm not that helpful anymore. The old witch doctor took a breath for a moment, then continued, as long as we don't change our yearning for civilization, the awakening of the will of the warriors and the people will not be suppressed continuously. One day, they will realize the abnormality of the tribal power structure, and realize that they have no say in tribal decision making. At that time, what if someone with ulterior motives uses this to divide the relationship between witch doctors and warriors and ordinary trolls? Bloody suppression? Can it be suppressed? Return of power. Admit one's own reactionary nature? Instead of being passive at that time, it is better to do it from the beginning. Cough cough cough. Huff. It is better to include the people in the design of the system from the beginning, and actively cultivate the people's wisdom and overall view. Only in this way will the foundation of the system we have built have the opportunity to become more perfect with the passage of time, instead of being caught in a dilemma one day in the future. As for Baki, you are very good, but too idealistic. Not all witch doctors do not have the desire for secular power. When designing the system, you cannot automatically turn them into selfless explorers. You must leave room and give them the opportunity to realize their ambitions. Ahem, that's all. Of course, this is just a little thought of the old man. Whether it can be used depends on you. How can it be useless? We think too one-sidedly. Yes, you are right. The three people who were named responded one after another. This answer was not perfunctory. The subsequent discussions did revolve around the opinions of the old witch doctor and formed a preliminary resolution. First, the tribe will form two parliaments, namely the Rune House to be established soon, and the House of Representatives to be prepared for a long time. Anti-dissuasion supplement. The House of Representatives plan failed due to long-term difficulties. Second, there will be a ruling body headed by the consul, the executive government. The Rune Council will be the guide to lead the tribe for a long time in the future. It will participate in the governance of the tribe in the form of various types of committees, and have extensive and in-depth powers in legislation, justice, diplomacy, military, policy and other aspects. Anti-dissuading supplement. Due to insufficient population, most committees are just formalities. The protagonist takes it for granted and is immature. Its temporary organizational structure is, all witch doctors become senior counselors, and witch doctor apprentices become trainee counselors. The former have decision-making power, and the latter have the right to make suggestions and listen, and to some extent act as decision executors. In the future, the counselors of the Rune Council will be born among the spellcasters with stricter admission standards. In addition, among all the non-growing and literate trolls in the tribe, the Rune Council will select 80 of them to form the House of Representatives, and under the guidance of the Rune Council, learn to join the decision-making of the tribe. Although at this stage, the House of Representatives may play more of an apprentice role of the Rune Parliament. In the future, when society as a whole has more intelligence, the election of the House of Representatives will be returned to all trolls in some form, and they will exercise relatively independently the power of tax audit, impeachment of officials, people's livelihood related and other aspects. It is expected that the House of Representatives in the future will become the representative of public opinion, with members coming from the grassroots, and having a shorter term. The Rune Parliament will act as a cooler for public opinion, with seats held by elites represented by witch doctors, and having a longer term, anti-dissuasion supplement. In fact, due to the scarcity of witch doctors, the term system has become empty talk, and no one can replace them when the term is up. Next is the Chief Archon. This position will replace the current de facto position of the chief, and will have clear and legal scope of power and responsibilities. Anti-dissuasion supplement. This also failed. The power is in the hands of the witch doctor. The deacon of the executive government was just a response bucket before the second change, and the word chief was not reflected. The current chief, the scheduled chief, ran to the army to serve as an officer in the middle period. At this stage, the appointment of the chief consul will first be nominated by the Rune House among its members, and then voted on by the House of Representatives for appointment. After taking office, the chief consul will be responsible for forming a cabinet, and be responsible to the two houses. The cabinet members are deacons, who are responsible for the specific affairs of all aspects of the tribe, and accept the guidance and supervision of the two houses and their subordinate relevant committees and their work. For example, the Foreign Affairs Deacon will accept the supervision, anti-dissuasion supplement. This position has been vacant for a long time, because it is unnecessary, and suggestions of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Rune House in terms of power, and in terms of expenditure and budget, it must be reviewed by the House of Representatives. Of course, these are only the tentative division of power and responsibility in the future. For now, not only is the House of Representatives unable to perform its tasks, but even the Rune Council will face a serious shortage of members for quite a long time. And what we need to do is to build the framework first. After discussing the general direction, Baki made the final summary. In addition, these proposals are far from being determined now. Even in order to avoid us from being involved in the dispute of whether the source of power is legal in the future, we must first obtain the approval and knowledge of the people, and let this approval and knowledge be preserved in written form. We must remember that witch doctors are also part of the tribe. Our power does not come from ourselves, but the people are the source of everything. Okay, understood. A group of trolls responded one after another, indicating that they approved of today's proposal. In addition, there is another thing that needs resources to be allocated to do. After finishing his speech, Baki just touched the bench and thought of something that needed to be solved urgently. In the puzzled eyes of the people sitting there, he stood up again and spoke. We desperately need a time unit between day and night, and growing age ring. Don't you think that the gap between the two is too big? It didn't matter when we were confused before, but it will definitely cause great inconvenience to our work and life in the future. That's right. Does anyone know how many days and nights are equal to a growing age ring? I haven't really noticed it. The great witch doctor Teeth obviously agreed with this view and asked immediately. I have calculated this. The one who answered Teeth was a new female witch doctor named Miaya. That's right, it's called Miaya instead of Miaya. This is a new trend recently. Spellcasters, especially those who are new, are gradually becoming more concerned about their own personality than before. This female troll has fangs that are far more pointed and small than other trolls of the same kind, which does not conform to the aesthetics of the tribe. This allows her mouth contour to remain delicate and her face softer. In addition, her figure is more slender than that of the male trolls. Unlike other trolls who are wrapped in rough grass skirts and feel cold in the wind, her lower body is wrapped in a delicate fur triangle, and the upper part is also covered by a chest support that is obviously carefully made. The exposed blue skin is moderate in depth and has obvious muscle contours. Overall, she is 50% less barbaric than other tribesmen and has a bit of intellectuality set off by fitness. This made Baki, who has lived among trolls for a long time and has gradually approached their aesthetics while retaining the concepts of his previous life, cast a little attention. After all, he is already in his prime, and in some aspects he has already fully matured, and occasional physical impulses are inevitable. Mia, who has long failed to reach a two-way acceptance with the mainstream aesthetics, is a standard troll in character and has not become inferior because of this. She stood up, and her high red hair danced with her movements like a rolling red cloud in the leaping mane of a wild horse. As if she sensed Baki's unique gaze, she was not shy or covered up. Instead, she smiled and nodded confidently and generously at Baki, and spoke again. A full-grown year has 9,600 days and 460,800 light hours. This span is indeed cumbersome. I also think that there needs to be a conversion unit similar to hours, minutes, and seconds. Below the middle, which Dr. Fang nudged back his waist, leaned close to his ear and whispered, "What? Are you interested? There are so many beautiful female trolls in the tribe, but you never even glanced at them. Why do you like the skinny and ugly one? Zizzy, look at her fangs, they are simply underdeveloped." Obviously, Baki is still an out-and-out alternative among the trolls, at least in terms of aesthetics. November 24th, 2022. The protagonist took it for granted in the early stage, and most of the policies were based on naive fantasies. Later, they naturally became formalities, and then there will be changes after more than 100 chapters. Chapter 33, Calendar and Term of Office. Baki rolled his eyes and ignored the witch doctor's joke, which was actually harmless, but not very interesting. He turned to Mia and asked, "Since you have paid attention to this matter, have you ever thought about how to deal with it? Can you tell me?" "Okay, I have indeed thought about it." As Mia narrated, everyone roughly understood her thoughts. In short, Mia discovered and summarized some cyclical laws hidden in nature. For example, among the group living monsters named windwolves by the tribe, the female beasts will go into heat uniformly in a certain period of time. If the cubs die, or are stolen after mating, gestation, and giving birth, the female beasts will not go into heat immediately, but will wait for a period of time before going into heat again with other beasts. After occasionally discovering this phenomenon, Mia came to the conclusion through more in-depth observation that the estrus of windwolves is cyclical. I found that the estrus period of female windwolves is about 430 to 500 days, and each estrus lasts about 13 to 21 days. In addition, when I discovered this pattern, I realized that there may be more such patterns hidden around. Sure enough, I made new discoveries later. First, the pregnancy period of female trolls is basically consistent. Second, although we don't have the concept of estrus period, female individuals will have periods of high desire every once in a while. After comparing different samples, I found that women who mate at this time will be more likely to become pregnant. Therefore, I call it the fertile period. Unlike the unified estrus of animal groups in nature, the fertile period of female trolls is not unified in time, but it also has obvious periodicity. Healthy, fully developed individuals usually have their own fertile period in a cycle of about 40 days. From the perspective of correlation, I think that for the tribe, the fertile period is more meaningful than the duration of the windwolf's estrus, and may be used as a time period unit of one level. Finally, although I don't know why, the chakra formation cycle of almost all naturally grown trees is almost the same. I cut off the trunk and recorded the chakra, then used magic to connect the tree. After repeating this observation process several times, I found that it takes about 480 days for almost all samples to form new chakra. The estrus interval of magical beasts will vary greatly depending on the species, but the chakra of trees is different. It is almost the same. Therefore, I think the chakra growth cycle is also suitable as the first level of time measurement. Which Dr. Mia, your research is very valuable, but you still have to pay attention to safety. The tribe cannot easily afford the loss of going to observe the windwolf pack alone. Windwolves are not something that can get close to trolls. Observing them at close range and for a long time is very risky, not to mention the high risk behavior of stealing cubs. Baki was pleased with the exploration spirit of the tribe's witch doctors, but he was secretly vigilant. Do these witch doctors really understand their own value? However, things had come to this point, and after trying to persuade them, he also began to discuss with the witch doctors how to integrate Mia's research conclusions into the current timekeeping system. However, this was not a very complicated matter for Baki. Aren't the concepts of year, month, and day from his previous life ready-made reference materials? Therefore, he did not overly complicate things, and in the spirit of taking what is useful, he quickly came up with a set of timekeeping methods. 40 days make up a month. 12 months, 480 days make up a year. 20 years, 240 months, and 9,600 days make up a mature cycle. That is to say, the troll's growth period lasts 20 years, the mature period lasts 240 to 280 years, and the old age period lasts 30 to 50 years. The theoretical lifespan is 290 to 350 years. If you calculate like this, our lives are quite long. Let me calculate. Baki has just entered mature age, about 30. Little girl Ma should be less than 20. This is indeed much more convenient. By the way, Coarse Teeth and I should also be in our mature age. Coarse Teeth, how much older are you than me, remember? Let me think. I'm probably 80 years older than you. I'm already at the end of my mature age. You're in the middle, and Baki has just stepped in. In the past, you had to wait 70 or 80 years to have a witch doctor, and look at today, it's great. Okay, stop sighing, both witch doctors. We still have to consider our terms as counselors and in office. After a period of not so intense discussion, the trolls roughly determined the terms of office for various types of officials. The term of office for members of the House of Representatives is set at 10 years, with half of them rotating every 5 years, with no limit on re-election, but no more than 5 times in a lifetime. The term of office for members of the Rune Senate is set at 30 years, with half of them re-elected every 15 years, with no limit on re-election, but no more than 3 times in a lifetime. The term of office for the Chief Archon is 20 years, with a limit of 3 re-elections, and a total of 6 terms in a lifetime. If everyone has no objection, then let's do this for now. Supplementary information to prevent you from quitting. The House of Representatives plan failed, and the term system for the Rune Parliament was aborted. Since power is in the hands of the witch doctor, the word chief in the Chief Archon is gradually no longer mentioned, and he has become one of the ordinary archons. The government structure will change in more than 100 chapters. Let's do this for now. It's hard to say what the future will be like. This thing will definitely need to be adjusted in the future. Sharp Fang waved his hand indifferently. Next, it's about how we communicate with our chief. This is quite embarrassing to think about. HMPH, I'm sorry. Is it appropriate for us witch doctors and apprentices to set so many rules after leaving all the trolls behind? Hey, what are you talking about? Calling all the trolls here, won't we still be the ones talking in the end? What other ideas can those reckless men come up with besides fighting? The key is not whether they say it or not, but whether they are there when the decision is made. What have you been doing? You worry about this and that all day long, and you don't say a word when you should. This is just a proposal, not a decision, so don't make a fuss. It's not too late for anything. Seeing that the 2 witch doctors started to confront each other again, Baki persuaded them again. We should now consider how to pass these things on to the tribesmen. I thought about it. Do we really need to hold the position of chief executive in our hands? Huh? What do you mean? Sharp Fang and the other trolls who were inclined to witch doctors in power were attracted by Baki's words. It was you who proposed the wise chief earlier, and now it's you who said it's unnecessary. Why do you have different ideas every now and then? Can there be a fixed number? The middle witch doctor said indignantly. Haha, don't be angry. Isn't this a change of circumstances? We didn't have the idea of establishing 2 houses before. Blade Fang laughed and comforted him. Since the Rune Council can already meet our goal of controlling the direction of development in terms of function, there is no need to hold on to the position on the table tightly. Didn't the old witch doctor also raise the concern of being divided before? It's better not to have a monopoly on this most obvious position. Isn't this first chief ruling position just a chance to prove our intentions? In addition, if the chief sits in that position, I believe the resistance will be smaller, right? Can he agree to those terms of office? Sharp Fang seemed to be convinced and turned to ask about possible differences. Haha, that means he's powerful, so there shouldn't be any problem. I think he's actually worried too. Oh, what are you worried about? I'm worried that in a few years, a challenger might chop off his head. Chapter 34, Insidious or Not. Many policies within the tribe were originally based on the planning of the witch doctors. Now the rules are just clearer, and there will be no impact in the short term. In addition, the authority of the chief will be determined. Even if the term limit is added, there are few chiefs who can end well in history. Thinking from another perspective, this is also a guarantee. Under these prerequisites, the negotiation with the chief went as smoothly as expected. With the nod of the chief, the witch doctors' planning at the meeting officially started. They set up the framework of the Rune Council and supplemented it with several committees to focus on related affairs in a certain aspect. For example, the Education Committee has Basic Education Committee and Literacy Committee. The main purpose is to implement tribal education while gradually changing the current value trend of only bravery in the tribe. The first task of the committee is to compile new textbooks, which require highlighting the hardships of the ancestors, while focusing on today's progress, to emphasize the importance of wisdom. The dark forest and the ancestors who cut through the thorns, the primitive gathering place and the hungry children, the fierce prey and the brave warriors, the monsters that destroyed the settlement and the witch doctor who turned into dust after activating the spell. The famine and the seriously injured warriors who left on their own initiative, the strange forest full of fruits and the old warriors who knelt on the ground and cried with joy. The meditative witch doctor and the new life brought by the rune spell. All of these can be written in. We want to emphasize wisdom and highlight witch doctor, but qualities such as bravery and self-sacrifice cannot be ignored. Baki made such a request for the compilation of the new textbooks. The committee also undertakes the initial work related to legal construction, which is responsible for removing the dross from the existing customs of the tribe and selecting a group of excellent traditions to become seed laws in order to cultivate laws that adapt to the tribal culture in the future. With this as a premise, coupled with the cooperation between witch doctors and warriors, which may become the norm in the future, the previous situation of the tribe, where everyone is a soldier and everyone is not a soldier, has a real foundation for breaking. Therefore, in order to adapt to the changes in the future war form, and out of considerations such as the differentiation of the two large warrior group, the current concept of warrior will be inherited by completely full-time warriors. The rest of the people will be divided into new units such as hunters and craftsmen, and take turns to carry out part-time militia training. The training committee will lead the construction in this regard. The number of warriors may not be large, but it is enough to serve as the seeds of tactics. In addition, the trolls have high elemental resistance, and war spells must be dominated by blessing and physical damage spells. A group of forces need to be drawn out for targeted development. The Witch War Integration Committee was built for this project. In addition, the residences of the tribal people are too simple and casual. Even if the trolls can adapt to a considerable degree of harsh environment, for the sake of beauty and civilization, infrastructure work will become a key project. The Civil Engineering Development Committee thus came on stage. In addition to the above mentioned institutions that will start work immediately, there are also a number of institutions such as the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Material Security Committee, which have been shelved due to lack of manpower, but they are only temporarily shelved. After the establishment of each committee, all literate people in the tribe who are over adult age are selected and forced to attend meetings and help with administrative work in their spare time to accumulate experience. When the House of Representatives is formed in the future, the first batch of members will be born from them, if nothing unexpected happens. The tribe is changing day by day, but this change is not always significant. Educational work is carried out silently, and military projects only radiate to a small group of people. At this stage, only the Civil Engineering Development Committee will deeply affect the lives of the people in the most direct way. In terms of tribal infrastructure, Baki hesitated several times, because there are indeed too many choices. Whether it is the majestic Pantheon and Parthenon, or the exquisite Far East atmosphere in the lofty and unpredictable, or the mysterious ancient Egypt, these memories from the previous life can be reproduced through magic. After several hesitations, he put forward basic requirements such as hygiene and beauty, and handed the design work to other witch doctors, asking them to study the architectural style that really fits the trolls. However, what he didn't expect was that the witch doctors did not directly carry out this work, but subcontracted it to all the people again, asking everyone to use their imagination, to think about what kind of environment do I want to live in the future? As a result, have you designed it? Has become the hottest topic in the tribe in the past 6 months. Do you want to be lazy? Or do you really think that it should be decided by all the people? No matter what the witch doctor's considerations are, the final effect is indeed very good. After the plan collection period that lasted for several months, all kinds of house sketches were piled up in the warehouse. Among these plans, the witch doctors eliminated designs that were impossible to realize, such as the cloud house of a troll. Combining conditions such as hygiene, beauty, and similarity, they got nearly 100 options. After that, they began to worry. Amid the witch doctor's complaints of no time and too busy, Baki suddenly thought of a good idea. He gathered almost all the literate trolls and told them to choose the plan they were most satisfied with and use the next month to impress more people. As for the requirements, they cannot resort to force or conspiracy, but must start from practicality, prospects and other aspects, and rely on language to seek or create supporters. As for the results, to be honest, several witch doctors are not optimistic. Everyone understands that with the current level, the tribesmen cannot make orderly choices at all, and it is a blessing if it does not turn into all-out violence. At the discussion meeting on related issues, the chief witch doctor expressed his dissatisfaction and said, "What's the point of this? Creating an unnecessary conflict? This is necessary." Under the puzzled expressions of the trolls present, Baki slowly stated his purpose. The Rune Council and its subordinate committees are still in a state of existence without name, but as the conclusion of the previous meeting, we need this name. The chief witch doctor understood what Baki wanted to say, and his expression began to hesitate. I think this is a good opportunity. The people will have the chance to realize that their own rationality is not enough to shoulder the future of the entire tribe. Then it will be time to formally establish the Rune Council and establish its guiding position. Of course, if they pass this test, it will not be a bad thing for the tribe. The establishment of the House of Representatives can be put on the agenda, and we can be more relaxed, right? Isn't this too insidious? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, The Stability of the Tribe and Its Own Bottleneck. Time soon came to a month later. The voting became a chaotic farce as the witch doctors had expected, and the supporters of each plan quarreled with each other. In the end, the so-called order became a bubble, and the trolls relied on their toughness, and staged a series of fights. Faced with this situation, the witch doctors chose to intervene before the situation escalated further. The 6 official witch doctors jointly released a spell with a shocking effect on the voting square from the commanding heights. The trolls below stopped their actions with a headache. The effect of the shocking spell on the trolls did not last too long, but it was enough to calm them down. Next, the tribe held a general meeting attended by all trolls above sub-adult age. At the meeting, Baki, as a representative of the witch doctors, gave a speech on the theme of our future. In his speech, he focused on the witch doctors' plans for the tribe's future, such as the Rune House, House of Representatives, Chief Archon, term of office, law, rights and obligations, etc. He also took the previous farce as an opportunity to propose the idea of 200-year training with the Rune Parliament as the center. After that, he asked all the trolls present to vote on the 3 topics of establishing the Rune House, preparing for the House of Representatives and witch doctor training. He also asked them to only make 2 statements, agree and disagree, with the former raising their hands and the latter not raising their hands. In this way, in silence, the 3 proposals were passed without any twists and turns. The Rune House has the endorsement of all trolls above sub-adult age, and has officially become a formal institution with legal authority since that day. Even if the trolls are not clear about what legal authority is for the time being, the witch doctors have already had a relevant concept, and understand that this gives them the justice of ruling to a certain extent. With justice, the work of each committee was officially launched. First, the election committee entered the process of nominating the chief governor after a clear-cut election process under the guidance of training. The current chief successfully transferred to the first chief governor and began to nominate members of the cabinet. In the context of training, the cabinet ministers are more like apprentices and deputy ministers of affairs. After checking and interviewing the nominees, the witch doctors gave them appointments quite straightforwardly and filled them into many committees together with the previously selected House of Representatives seedlings. Afterwards, the construction plan of the tribe was also selected in the discussion of the members. The witch doctors chose the treehouse plan that is closer to nature and prepared to develop the corresponding functional trees. After initially giving a series of policy-related directions, Baki, who did not intend to intervene in specific matters, finally ushered in a long-awaited idle period. However, this does not mean that he is really idle. The old witch doctor's deadline and the bottleneck on the witch doctor's road are new challenges he faces. The former is easy to understand. The old witch doctor is really too old. Now that he has passed the stable stage of old age, he may die at any time. The latter is a problem he has only recently realized. The witch doctor's road, in short, is a common growth of physique and spirit. However, while the spiritual level is constantly improving with the assistance of meditation, the system is limited by natural selection and stagnant. The prime age is the peak of the troll's physique in the natural state. No matter how much regular training is carried out afterwards, no significant improvement can be obtained. As a result, the witch doctor's road, that was originally advancing on both legs, suddenly collapsed, as if it was lame. The control precision is increasing, but there has been no progress in the total amount of magic power. In addition, the qualitative change has not yet arrived. If Baki does not think of a way, then his so-called witch doctor path will always exist at only 2 levels, apprentice and formal witch doctor. However, he is not without direction. Common sense from his previous life told him that there is a complex relationship between matter and energy. Without too much in-depth understanding, Baki can draw such a conclusion based on this superficial cognition. Since it is impossible to convert more energy into existing matter, then find a way to increase the total amount of matter he possesses. Of course, this kind of possession does not mean that he should overeat, and the specific method must be found in another way. For example, in his previous life, there seemed to be a concept of atomic nuclei capturing electrons and neutrons. Although he was not very clear about the specific principles and processes, this form was what he was going to learn from. Consider the body as a whole composed of countless elementary particles, regardless of whether these elementary particles are element or something else, to use them to capture free particles from the outside world, thereby increasing its own mass. The witch doctors have already reached a relatively unified view on the prerequisites for the establishment of spells in this world, namely the so-called active element. If this hypothesis is established, it is equivalent to giving him the external conditions for trying. The main problem he faces now is that he is not from a science background and has a lack of relevant knowledge. But this is not difficult for him. In such a world, where consciousness can directly affect matter to a certain extent, there is nothing that cannot be brained. It is better to take the old steps and build a single element model in the sea of consciousness first, and through self-hypnosis, make it form a connection with a certain point in the body in reality. The construction of the element model is a process of continuous trial and error. Since it depends on element to capture free particles, then element must be a composite body. Considering this reason, and combining the basic atomic theory of the previous life, Baki first tried to simulate an element structure composed of single core plus single outer layer particle, and tried to connect it to reality through meditation. Unexpectedly, it really succeeded. It did connect to a certain target, but because the target was too small for Baki now, he had not yet reached the cellular level of observation, and the horizon was several orders of magnitude different from it, resulting in not being able to see. But this was inevitable in the mind, so he just had to influence it indirectly through meditation. However, a proton plus an electron. Isn't this hydrogen? Does this mean that his long-standing doubts about the structure of matter in the other world have been easily solved? Maybe, maybe not. However, since this structure does exist in the body, no matter what it is, Baki will find a way to use it next. You know, the effect of mental power acting on oneself is far more intense than the influence on the outside world. Science is so difficult. The time spent reading materials and the efficiency of converting them into text are really too low. Chapter 36 Hydrogen, Oxygen, and Water, signed. Since there is a ready-made name, there is no need to think hard about a new name. This element found in the body was named hydrogen atom by Bakata for the sake of convenience. Its core was named proton and the outer layer was electron. After indirect meditation and trial, he found that the hydrogen atom did not exist independently in the body, at least the one he marked now did not exist independently. Its outer electron seemed to become a bridge to combine it with other element. He thought about it and understood what was going on. There is also water in the other world. Now that the existence of hydrogen atoms has been basically confirmed, and there is also combustion as circumstantial evidence, then correspondingly, oxygen atoms should also be possible, right? He had memorized the periodic table before, although he had almost forgotten it before crossing, and now he can't remember it completely. He tried to recall it, and found that only the first hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron was impressive. Going forward, he would have to try hard to think about hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus. What comes after that? Unable to remember, Baki didn't care about the chemistry teacher who might be crying in a world away, and began to think about what he could do with this limited knowledge. First of all, the operation of the body is inseparable from basic chemical reactions, and chemical reactions seem to be directly related to the electronic structure of atoms, so absorbing electrons to increase mass may not be realistic. However, electrons seem to account for a very small proportion of the mass of atoms, and absorbing them may not have much effect. In this case, the key to increasing one's own mass seems to be to increase the number of protons in the nucleus. By the way, there should be something called neutrons that are also massive particles. But how to do it specifically? Since we don't have any clues, let's start with the hydrogen atom. With an electron, since the name of the electron contains electricity, it should be charged. I always feel that I have made a very inappropriate definition. But it doesn't matter. Electricity is divided into positive and negative. Since hydrogen atoms can exist in the form of a proton plus an electron, then the two should be positive and negative respectively, and the neutron may be electrically neutral. Based on this speculation, he once again obtained a simple particle structure, an atomic model composed of a proton and a neutron combined as the nucleus, and an electron outside the nucleus. I vaguely remember that atomic number equals number of protons. This model has only one proton like hydrogen atoms, so it seems to overlap with hydrogen in the periodic table. Does such a thing really exist, or did I remember it wrong? Hydrogen originally contains a neutron. Baki vaguely remembered that such an atom should exist, but the relevant memory was too vague, and he was a little unsure for a while. Fortunately, the body is a melting pot of element, so it is okay to look for it. So, he planned to use the same method as the previous determination of hydrogen atoms to conduct a meditation and positioning in the body. The result was somewhat unexpected. This structure does exist. Wait. Isotope. It seems that there is such a name. Then this should be the isotope of hydrogen. The one without neutrons is called hydrogen 1, and the one with a neutron is called hydrogen 2. Let's name it like this for now. While naming it casually, Baki had a new association. Since hydrogen 2 has one more neutron than hydrogen 1, its mass must be about twice as large. Can it increase its own mass by converting all hydrogen 1 into hydrogen 2? But on second thought, the source of the added neutrons is still a problem, and in the end, he still can't get around the old idea of absorbing foreign particles. In addition, he vaguely sensed a hint of danger, and his subconscious seemed to prevent him from trying this. Illusion? Or is it really like this? Have I overlooked something? Although he didn't understand what was going on, since the subconscious could represent some of the things he had forgotten to a certain extent, Baki planned to change his mind for the sake of caution. According to the previous idea, by increasing his own mass, he could indirectly drive the energy contained. But now, since it is found that the element in the body exists in a more complex combination state, how can we absorb external element? What form will the foreign element exist in after entering the body? It seems that a layer of fog shrouded his mind, and he couldn't think of a good direction for a while. Imagination is useless, we still have to take action first. With this idea in mind, Baki entered a meditative state again. He didn't know how atoms formed cells, but he only remembered that there should be several levels of structure between them. But one thing he could be sure of was that the body must contain water, which gave him room for operation. First, assume the existence of the oxygen atom, and use the remaining memory of the periodic table to infer its atomic structure. It is known that the atomic number of oxygen is 8, so it should have 8 protons, 8 electrons, and may also have 8 neutrons. In this way, simulate the structural model of the oxygen atom for backup. In addition, 2 hydrogen atoms can combine with 1 oxygen atom to form a water molecule H2O. Atoms form molecules. Should it be achieved by sharing electrons? Electrons seem to be divided into energy level orbits, and the number of electrons contained in the inner layer is smaller than that in the outer layer. There seems to be a setting of how many electrons are most stable, but unfortunately I don't remember it, so I will fuzzy it when the time comes. Using these known conditions, Baki simulated several combinations. In one of the models, 2 hydrogen atoms are like ears attached to the big faceplate oxygen atom, and the connection between them is a bridge formed by shared electrons. This model is the most pleasing to the eye, so Baki decided to use it first. In the following meditation, he took the initiative to blur most of the structure of his body and only focused on a local area, hoping to amplify the observation power of the spirit in this way. Of course, it was not that he wanted to observe anything, but mainly wanted to replicate the previous water molecule structure in the selected area as much as possible. He chose the epidermis of his palm as this area, and expanded and defined it through meditation, but the definition was not clear. It was just an attempt. First of all, the epidermis should contain water, but because the content and existence form are unclear, the only option is to let the water molecules be evenly arranged in a cloud shape. These water molecule structures will act as a kind of handle plus display screen, dwarfing the molecular level reactions that cannot be observed and actively controlled. Next, it is time to let the external particles enter. Apply vibrations to the water molecules so that they spread and gather like breathing. During this period, particles are constantly being wrapped into the molecular cloud. Baki can't see these wrapped things, but the display screen effect brought by meditation can help him feel that something has indeed come in. But unfortunately, let alone a gratifying reaction, there is not even a bad situation. This means 2 things. First, the number of water molecules he simulated is negligible for the hand epidermis. Second, it does not mean that the particles entering the body are equal to being owned by you. The first point is needless to say, his brain has limited computing power and can no longer increase the number of water molecules. The second point shows that it is not enough to just absorb external element into the body, and how to assimilate them is the key to the problem. Perhaps, using existing atoms to combine with foreign atoms to form new molecules is a direction, but he can't even figure out the composition of the body at the cellular level, let alone the atomic level, molecular level, and the structural mechanism that must exist between molecules and cells. If you don't understand these, you dare not try easily. To be honest, I didn't expect that this book would be signed. I was very happy, but because I was tossed by the facial recognition for 2 hours when signing the electronic contract, my passion was exhausted. In short, it should be a good thing to be able to sign the contract, and I will continue to work hard. Chapter 37. I'm thinking. While he was thinking about what to do next, Baki made a new discovery. Some of the water molecules that were marked disappeared without reason after losing his control. Huh? What's going on? Where is all the water in my body? Baki was puzzled by this because he did not go to the toilet or sweat a lot during this process, and he did not think that all the disappeared water molecules were excreted from the body. Maybe hydrogen and oxygen separated because of some reactions in the body? At this point, the mental power software could not keep up, and its drawbacks were revealed again. When the water molecules were made before, in order to maximize the molecular weight, the marking of its basic constituent units was abandoned. In other words, the oxygen atoms and hydrogen atoms contained in these water molecules are not within the observation range of consciousness. Faced with this situation, in order to figure out what happened, he had to sync the marking to the atomic level again. The steps are, first, erase the connection between the water molecules in the sea of consciousness and the water molecules in reality. Then, by dissolving most of the sea water molecules in consciousness, release the part of the mental power memory that they originally occupied. Then, transfer this part of memory to mark the internal structure of the remaining water molecules. This process can be described more vividly. If the sea of consciousness can mark a maximum of 12 units, then he only marked 12 water molecules before. Each water molecule contains 3 atomic units. If these atoms are to be included in the observation range, the marking unit needs to be changed from 12 water molecules to 3 water molecules plus 9 internal atoms equals 12 new units. Of course, the total number of units that can be marked by the sea of consciousness of the witch doctor is actually far more than this. After a perspective transfer similar to the above process, the water molecules that are linked to the body again have been reduced by most. Next, Baki stopped receiving information from the outside world and focused on observing the target. The effect of perspective syncing is quite obvious, and this time the observation did not stop at the disappearance of water molecules. By locating hydrogen and oxygen, he found that his previous guess was at least partially correct. Some oxygen atoms really disappeared from the body, and some oxygen atoms ran around like headless flies. Some oxygen and most of the hydrogen continued to remain in the body in other ways. After observing these changes together with the operation of the body at the macro level, he understood where the truly disappeared part of the oxygen went. The pattern of its disappearance can often match its own breathing, and it is natural to think of CO2. Since the observation is limited to the target itself, it is impossible to see what it is connected to and what it forms. It is only known that after oxygen combines with a certain substance, it is automatically excluded from the composition by the recognition system, and thus disappears with the marked oxygen. Therefore, the conclusion of CO2 is just a guess. The results of the observation are not limited to this. It may be because the target is dense enough, and a few marked hydrogen and oxygen are extremely lucky to have gathered after decomposition, and once again formed a new water molecule. Decomposing water and synthesizing water? This is definitely not a fart after taking off pants. Something must have happened in the middle. In order to observe further, Baki first released all the targets and created a new batch in a short period of time. The scope of this new batch of marks was compressed from covering the entire hand epidermis to the size of a fingernail. The fingernail of a troll is actually not small. When taking this step, he was actually prepared for failure. Although the water molecules he meditated on were not many, they were definitely not few. He didn't know whether such a small piece of skin could provide enough water molecules for him to connect. As a result, it was more than enough. This made him a little nervous while happy. The order of magnitude of the molecules in his body might be more terrifying than he imagined. The observation continued. The phenomenon of water turning into water appeared more and more frequently after the targets were concentrated. From this, a preliminary judgment can be made. This is indeed an important step in life activities, not a coincidence. In order to increase the variables, Baki controlled some water molecules, spontaneously free atoms after decomposition, and artificial free atoms that he actively broken bridges and tried to repeat the initial oscillation again. Changes occurred, but they were completely different from what he expected. He found that as the oscillation became more frequent, that part of the skin actually emitted a faint purple light with a little heat. Huh? What's going on? Baki was surprised and quite excited. In his cognition, light and heat can be considered a form of energy to some extent. This means that, if the phenomenon that is happening now can be used well, the problem of the growth of one's own energy level may have an effective solution. The marked hydrogen and oxygen atoms are obviously more active, which is reflected in the combination with other units and the increase in the decomposition rate. The phenomena of water decomposition and water synthesis are particularly frequent. Then these two phenomena may be the necessary ways to generate energy for the body? Let me think about it. In the formation of molecules, the bridge role of electrons should be crucial. So, is there any change in electrons? We need to lower the perspective of observation one level and include electrons. Thinking of this, Baki started the operation again. Including electrons in the category of marking means that each water molecule needs to invest 10 more units of observation, which is obviously a huge project. I thought that, as long as the number of marked water molecules was severely reduced, the electrons could also be included in the field of vision, but he failed. After several consecutive attempts, Baki found that the sea of consciousness marking connection method had a bottleneck. In the initial modeling stage, he had no way to establish a complete structure, from molecules to atoms, and then to atomic nuclei, taking into account electrons. As for the reason, the burden on thinking is too great to compose structures from extremely large to extremely small. While building molecules, it is impossible to pay attention to the internal structure of atoms. In desperation, we can only give up maintaining the molecular structure and focus on modeling at the atomic level. Repeat the previous steps and start the experiment again. However, new problems arise again. This time, it is the electrons simulated in the sea of consciousness. After linking the electrons in reality point to point, their movement trajectories disappear from observation. They clearly exist, but they cannot be located. Why is this again? He was furious for a while, realized that this was not a solution, and began to seek a solution. After searching his mind for the little physical knowledge and common sense in life, he really thought of a solution. In the dark, the footprints of mice will be left on the flour, so can we also sprinkle flour under the feet of electrons? With this idea in mind, he no longer sought to see the electrons directly, but evenly spread a layer of magic power in the sea of consciousness, where the electrons should be, using the characteristics of magic power and the sea of consciousness that both exist and do not exist. He set it to only be interfered with by the electrons unilaterally, and will not affect the movement of the electrons. After all this tossing and turning, finally, the electrons, like rats stealing food in the dark, left clear evidence. I'm a little unconfident. This part corresponding to the theory of magic and reality is actually quite interesting to write, and I can learn more by looking up information. But, whether the readers agree or not is a question I dare not ask, because I don't know how many readers who answer can represent. In addition, I have signed a contract. Let everyone know. Please leave more comments and recommendation votes. Thank you all. Chapter 38. In-depth study and lessons. The footprints left by the electrons in the magic power appear as tracks that are formed by dots and lines. Multiple tracks together form a cloud that wraps around the nucleus. When the target electrons, along with the parent atoms, are pulled to the outermost layer of the atomic pile by the blade, these clouds suddenly spread their coverage for some unknown reasons. This diffusion state will only last for a very short time. Afterwards, some electrons will completely break away from the atomic nucleus and become wanderers. Some electrons will fall back to their original orbits. And this falling back process will show the characteristics of luminescence and heat release at the macroscopic level. At the atomic level, it will show a surge in reactionability. In addition, the phenomenon of electron cloud diffusion seems to be more likely to occur in the outermost layer of the atomic pile, that is, the part that is closer to, or just on the surface of the body. Based on these characteristics, Baki believes that electrons will absorb some form of energy from the air, or the external environment, thus producing the phenomenon of cloud diffusion, and cloud fall is the reverse step of the above phenomenon. During or before the fall, the electrons will dissipate part of the previously absorbed energy in the form of light and heat. In addition, the decomposed water and synthesized water that appear in this process should also be accompanied by the absorption and release of energy respectively, as for which is releasing energy and which is absorbing energy. Baki made a preliminary judgment after repeated observations. The process of water decomposition is accompanied by the release of energy, and the process of water synthesis has energy absorbed. Why do these two reactions become more frequent as the electrons fall? Although there is a lack of solid experimental evidence, it does not affect Baki's guess. Because the reactions of decomposing water and synthesizing water have been observed even when there is no electron fallback energy, therefore, can we make such an assumption? First, there are two substances A and B in the body that absorb and release energy, and they can be converted into each other under certain conditions. Secondly, combined with the previous observation of water molecules, we can further obtain the following formula that may be established, namely, A plus ENERGY plus OTHER substances, that may be INVOLVED equals B plus WATER plus OTHER products that may exist, which is a process of absorbing energy and producing water. B plus WATER plus OTHERS equals A plus ENERGY plus OTHERS, which is the opposite process of releasing energy and decomposing water. The part of A converting to B is defined as the positive reaction, and the part of B converting to A is called the reverse reaction. They maintain the operation of the body through continuous conversion. However, the energy brought by the electron fluctuations, or other variables, that appear during this period, stimulate the occurrence of the positive reaction, resulting in the appearance of additional B. The additional B, in turn, promotes the operation of the reverse reaction to generate the corresponding A. The extra A is then, therefore, the conversion of A and B, and the accompanying hydrolysis and hydration phenomenon are accelerated. In short, after various analyses, it can be summarized that electron fallback is indeed an effective way to increase extra energy and promote the rise of magic energy level. However, the previous forward and reverse reaction should be a form of energy metabolism in the body, which must occur in a certain cell or cell structure. This made Baki worry about whether such excessive operation would affect the life of the cell or the corresponding cell structure. But the worry only lasted for a moment, and he quickly decided to go in this direction first. There are roughly several reasons for making this choice. First, Baki had heard of quantum theory in his previous life. Although he did not understand the specific content deeply, he remembered shocking news such as the incredible world of microscopic world. It seems that many common sense in the macroscopic world will show significant differences in the microscopic world. The view that cells will be overtired is a guess he made, based on macroscopic common sense. Whether this common sense can be established in the world of cells or even smaller scales is still a question. Secondly, he remembered that the metabolic rate of cells was very fast. He did not know whether they would die in the morning or the evening, but it seemed that there were indeed cells that needed to be renewed every few days. Therefore, even if his operation does make the cells tired, it is still unknown whether it will affect the lifespan of the body as a whole. Again, although the number of atoms and electrons indirectly controlled by the sea of consciousness is often tens of thousands, this may be just a drop in the ocean for the body. So, even if he kills these cells, for the whole body, it may just be the extent of a layer of membrane being scraped off when scratching. Finally, the increase in the level of witch doctor is crucial, and a certain degree of risk is impossible for Baki to stop eating because of choking. Now that the decision has been made, the remaining issue is the application. Based on the previous speculation about energy conversion, Baki first assumes that there is a kind of power cell in the body that is responsible for the process. Based on the elementary cell structure knowledge of the previous life, after simulating a simple cell structure in the meditation space, Baki looked at the cell membrane, cytoplasm, and cell nucleus that he had no concept of, and fell into self-blame. God has mercy on me. This is one of the few intracellular structures in my memory, but the fact is that he can't go back and learn it again, so he can only reluctantly give up the idea of further improvement. Next, give the semi-finished cell a definition, a power cell, assuming that it is a unit responsible for energy supply and energy storage. After that, enter deep meditation and perform a vague positioning of it in the body. During deep meditation, the cells in the body are entered by the main consciousness and begin to perform a kind of self-examination. During this process, cells that determine that they have the above functions will report the results in the form of information. Cells that believe that they do not have this function will remain silent. The reported information will eventually be summarized in the sea of consciousness and received by the central body of the main consciousness, that is, Baki's controlled autonomous consciousness. Feedback came quickly, and thousands and tens of thousands of messages, like "it's me," were transmitted. Oh, not bad. Baki was very happy. After all, the more cells responsible for energy conversion, the lower the risk of him controlling part of them. Then, information of the order of 100,000 poured in instantly, and his face began to turn black. This is quite a lot. Next was hundreds of thousands of levels, and his face had turned blue. Why so much? Then, a huge amount of information, enough to disperse his autonomous consciousness, swarmed in within a very short time. At this point, Baki finally had no time to sigh. He first stretched out his thoughts, trying to suppress the speed of the information influx as much as possible, but soon found that this was useless and his thoughts had begun to blur. If this continued, he might lose the concept of I and become a pure cell polymer. Faced with such an unbearable price, Baki no longer hesitated and immediately cut off his meditation. Facts have proved that this operation is effective. If cells are users, deep meditation is similar to pulling up a WeChat group composed of users, and the controlled main consciousness is equivalent to the group owner. The command of self-check and feedback activated the vast number of ordinary users who were usually responsible for lurking. Unimaginable information flow instantly rushed into the group owner's 486 host, causing the host's operating speed to stagnate, and there was a tendency to further burn the host completely. Baki's operation of stretching his thoughts and exiting meditation was also similar to reducing the network speed and disbanding the WeChat group. In this way, he was only impacted by the first part of the information. As for the information feedback from the rest of the cells, when meditation was forcibly interrupted, it became a chaotic signal that had lost its transmission terminal and was borne by all the cells. Baki, who returned to reality, did not last long. He was conscious for only a moment before he fell into a coma with a nosebleed. Before he fell into a coma, he vaguely realized that he seemed to have done something wrong. The energy conversion function might not be an individual phenomenon undertaken independently by a certain type of cell, but rather existed widely among the cells of the body. In the end, all these thoughts converged into one thought: why didn't you study hard? Please collect, read, vote, and leave a message. Chapter 39 Visitors to the Residence. Before this, Miya's impression of Baki was always that he was the founder of the witch doctor path, a serious scholar, and that his lectures were difficult to understand. But after the system meeting a few months ago, this stereotype memory has changed to a certain extent. She clearly remembers that Baki's gaze towards her at that time had a different feeling, as if a ball of fire was tickling every inch of her skin. Although Miya doesn't think she is an ugly girl, she has a clear understanding of how most of the male trolls in the tribe treat her. In this case, Baki's special treatment easily attracted this troll girl who is about to fully mature. She was curious and inexplicably excited. Unfortunately, everyone was too busy during this period. Not only did Baki the witch doctor go deep into the research as usual, but she herself was also confused by the endless topics under the new system of the tribe. But today, with a rare long-lost free time, Miya decided to embark on the road of exploration. The bright red hair was gathered from the forehead to the back of the head, and the hair was scattered along the neck and back, and occasionally thin braids could be seen in the hair mixed in and used for decoration. Around the neck, there was a line made of plant fiber mixed with animal tendons, which fixed a curved rib at the level of the armpit line in front of the chest, and on it, a curtain woven from animal hair hung down along the curve to the front of the lower abdomen. Further down, the vines with unnecessary branches and leaves removed tightly wrapped around the waist, and the curtains of the same material as the upper body were fixed in front and behind, and hung down over the thighs. As the steps were taken alternately during the march, the curtains swayed left and right, or up and down. At that time, the healthy and plump blue could be seen from the gaps and the empty spaces on both sides. Obviously, she dressed up carefully. However, the males passing by didn't seem to like this style very much. They just greeted casually and were busy with their own affairs. But Mia didn't care about the thoughts of these barbaric fellows. She was concentrating on thinking about what to say later while walking towards the direction of Bakker's residence. Although the number of witch doctors and witch doctor apprentices increased, everyone no longer lived in the center of the tribe, but the tribes were not big, so it didn't take much time to reach the destination. Knock, knock, knock. Backy witch doctor, Backy witch doctor. The knock on the door sounded lightly, accompanied by the female troll's voice as soft as possible. But there was no response from the inside. Mia was confused. Didn't she hear that the target had gone out? Seeing that no one answered, after knocking on the door and shouting several times, she jumped a few times and climbed onto the roof through the unevenness of the wall and looked inside through the skylight. At this glance, she immediately saw the figure of the troll, who was unconscious and maintained a strange posture. Without thinking too much, she ducked and went in through the skylight. The height of 6 or 7 meters could not stop her steps at all, and she landed directly beside Backy. Mia was a little anxious, both in public and in private. She nervously reached out her hand and touched Backy's chest to feel the movement of his organs. The result made her feel relieved. The organs were functioning strongly and powerfully, and it was obvious that his life was safe. She was no longer in a hurry. She took Backy into her arms with one hand and pressed her other free hand on his forehead. A chant accompanied by a faint green light and the unknown concentration technique was performed. Backy's consciousness gradually returned, and at the same time, he was hit by a series of headaches, which made him completely unable to take care of his own situation. Although there was also the reason that he was in the tribe before he fell into a coma and knew that he would not be in danger, the main reason he ignored at this moment was that the pain was too intense. However, the body's pursuit of comfort did not seem to be covered by the pain on the spiritual level. It was as if the pain of the main consciousness had little to do with the whole. He was subconsciously controlled to constantly change his posture, arching left and right like a pig stealing cabbage. The curtain that was only fixed on the upper side had already been opened, and the sharp fangs occasionally scratched the resilient blue. There were no scars, only white marks and uncontrollable moans. It was a little itchy and a little stimulating. When Backy really woke up, a long time had passed. His eyes moved slightly, but he didn't open them, as if he was in a daze. Backy moved subconsciously. The pillow on his face didn't seem to be the familiar wooden pillow. It was a strange feeling. Tough and smooth, like rubber, but with a bit of skin texture. Strictly speaking, this is a kind of touch that shouldn't have a charming feeling. But what's the matter with this jumping excitement in the body? Isn't this the feeling of troll skin? Backy, who finally realized something, immediately opened his eyes and jumped away, turning his head to look at the source of the weird feeling. At this glance, his eyes seemed to be stuffed with 2 fan blades, showing 5 points of vigilance, 4 points of doubt, and 1 point of hidden expectation. The person who saw it, regardless of how solemnly he was dressed, at least he was naked. Ahem, the owner of the voice obviously didn't care much. She simply tidied her clothes, put those complicated and somewhat useless lines back to their proper positions, and asked with concern, "Backy witch doctor, how are you? When I came in, you were unconscious, and you had a lot of nosebleeds." After that, she pointed to the part of her body that was accidentally rubbed to show that she was indeed in a hurry to save the trolls, and not some bad troll who broken without reason. Backy was shocked by this bold behavior and subconsciously wanted to close his eyes and not look at anything indecent. But before that, he was the first to react that it seemed completely unnecessary. These trolls didn't feel ashamed of being naked. If it weren't for preventing dirty things from getting in, they would actually be willing to maintain the nudity faction. This one, at least, was wearing clothes, but the clothes were more exquisite and unique. In this case, he didn't pretend to be so, and looked over openly. "Oh, isn't this Mia? How come there are more new things in a few days?" He coughed lightly without any embarrassment, pretending to be calm, and came to Mia's side and sat cross-legged, then said, "Ahem, I did some energy meditation experiments, and my mental power was hit by a wave of information. What time is it now?" I don't know. I didn't pay attention when I went out, and I can't be sure after coming to you. The female troll brought her arms together, touched her fists, and stretched them forward to the ground so that her upper body could always face the direction where Becky was sitting. Perhaps this posture was a little awkward to maintain. She had to cross her long legs and snake them to the side and back like a snake's tail, and leaned forward and raised her head to respond. What are you doing here? Nothing special. I just felt that the way you looked at me seemed to be different from other males, so I wanted to ask, do you want to mate with me? Ahem. Chapter 40. Blood and Vigor. Faced with the rare female trolls in the tribe who could match his aesthetics, Becky seemed to have two options in his mind. First, talk to her about magic and politics, and have a healthy conversation suitable for all ages. Second, push her down. Our hot-blooded Becky obviously chose the second option. After consulting Maya, the two fell to the ground in each other's arms, and gave each other their first time. The battle that lasted for 24 hours came to an end on the second day. Looking at the woman lying in his arms, Becky thought of some unpleasant problems. The troll society did not have the chastity concept of his previous life. Male trolls spend their whole lives sowing the seeds of life everywhere. Women's lives, in addition to barely coping with the past pregnancy and breastfeeding period, are always enjoying sex with different objects. He does not intend to morally condemn this situation, nor does he think that marriage and fixed partner systems are justice defined by the universe. However, this does not mean that he can casually accept that the woman he likes may lie in the arms of other males tomorrow or at some point in the future. For a moment, everything seemed to be dull. The young male, who was overwhelmed by the first pleasure into lives, was overwhelmed by the sudden possessiveness. Perhaps, if he thought about it at another time, the answer would be completely different. But now, Becky did not intend to wrong himself. He hesitated for a moment, then made up his mind and took action. He embraced the female troll, keeping the distance between their noses almost touching, staring into her eyes and said, Maya, have you ever thought about having a fixed partner? Maya looked at the possessiveness in the eyes of the male who was pressed by her arms, and she suddenly had a new understanding of this legendary pioneer. But this possessiveness did not make her hate it. A long and pointed tongue stretched out from the slightly opened lips, licked the opposite corner of the lips with desire, and was immediately fixed tightly. The warm and wet intercourse was fleeting, and the defeated Mia asked with some confusion, Fixed partner? What do you mean? After completing a defensive counter-attack in a corner, and forcing the opponent's general to retreat, the victor Becky responded triumphantly, From now on, you will only mate with me. After saying this answer that almost completely violated the tribal tradition, the male who regained consciousness from the false victory became a little uneasy again. But what Becky didn't expect was that his idea actually aroused the other party's interest. With her arms wrapped around his strong neck and her forehead against his, the female voice suppressed her excitement and asked as if to confirm, What about you? Are you only with me too? RHMM. Of course, this must be mutual. Okay, you agreed? Of course, but how can you guarantee that our mutual promise will be fulfilled? This is a good question, and Becky couldn't help but fall into thought. After a while, he answered with a little uncertainty, How about we make a vow to each other under the witness of the whole tribe? Yes, it's called a wedding. After marriage, we will be a separate family. Although I don't know why it's called a wedding, what can it guarantee? Moreover, everything has its positive and negative sides, so if there is a marriage, there will be a divorce, don't you think? Humph. That's right. There are countless examples of extramarital affairs and divorces in previous lives. Weddings have never been a trustworthy promise. But what to do? To be honest, Becky also wanted to solve this problem once and for all, so that future couples would never have to worry about each other's betrayal. While thinking like this, he thought of the sea of consciousness and deep meditation. Suddenly, he realized that could this problem be solved through deep meditation vows? After entering deep meditation, the main consciousness can coordinate the general will of all cells to a certain extent. If used well, it may become a kind of vow that must be fulfilled. If it can, this effect will not only be limited to the so-called wedding, but will also constrain other behaviors. For example, business, alliances, etc. He told Mia about this idea and wanted to hear her opinion. The female troll was quite smart and quickly thought of the disadvantages of this method. The female voice said faintly, "Have you ever thought about it? What if we get tired of each other in the future? Wouldn't this oath be a torture? This is indeed a problem, so what do you think? Well, how about adding a clause to the deep meditation oath? The bodies and spirits of both parties will be attracted to each other, and this attraction will last throughout their lives. What do you think?" To be honest, it's a bit cruel. It can even be said that this oath distorts each other's intellect to some extent. Can the attraction that has been transformed like this really be considered love? Becky couldn't help but think so. However, love itself seems to be extended to a cold physiological phenomenon. Now, it's just that on top of dopamine or some other endocrine product, an extra layer of oath has been added. Thinking about it this way, it doesn't seem unacceptable. Moreover, instead of worrying about the 7-year itch, cuckolding, and backstabbing, solving the problem once and for all seems to save a lot of energy and cost. I have no problem, but have you really thought about it? This kind of vow, to put it bluntly, it is a distortion of will. Do you really think that this is what you want? Well, I don't want to spend too much time on the partner. You can already satisfy all my fantasies. If the vow can be exchanged for a couple who are always attracted to each other, is that the word? Yes. It seems good to be able to exchange for a marital relationship that is always attracted to each other and a stable family, isn't it? Besides, are you attracted to me at this moment? No doubt, I'm attracted to you. Becky responded without hesitation. I'm also attracted to you. So is it wrong for us to try to maintain this mutual attraction? Yes. The male voice responded with some uncertainty. Yes, and the deep meditation oath is one of the results of our efforts. Is there anything wrong with that? It seems that it is not wrong. Becky felt that he was somewhat convinced. This thing did not seem so evil. Yes, we are not wrong. As long as we recognized each other and were truly willing to maintain this relationship at the time of the oath, then making this choice is the power we have. Mia leaned over to Becky's ear, breathing out warm breath and bewitching him. Sir, you don't want your future wife to lie in the arms of another male, right? Damn female troll. You angered a gentleman. Becky said some difficult words, overwhelmed the giggling bewitcher, and entered the full fire mode again. Chapter 41 New and Old. After another fierce battle, they were still not satisfied and discussed the content of the pledge. Soon, they finally got a relatively complete version, the central idea of which was roughly 1. The two parties of the oath will never betray each other and abide by chastity. 2. The bodies and souls of the two parties of the oath will be attracted to each other for the rest of their lives. 3. The two parties of the oath will share honor and disgrace from now on and put common interests above their own interests. This is the consensus they reached in the discussion and a common vision. There is no situation where one feels that he is at a disadvantage. After ending the relevant discussion, there were several battles day and night. Only when even the troll body felt hollowed out did Becky propose a truce. Although he felt ashamed under the other party's half-smiled gaze, he really couldn't do it anymore, and hurriedly left his residence like a fugitive. After a short rest, Becky and Mia jointly proposed a motion in the Rune House, entitled On the Discussion of Fixed Partners and Family. This motion caused an uproar among the witch doctor and the House of Representatives trainee who were listening. The opposition led by the great witch doctor believed that this was not feasible and that it seriously violated the tribal tradition. Moreover, the family would bring a series of problems and even impact the public ownership foundation of the tribe at that time. The supporters led by the middle witch doctor held a completely opposite view. They believed that the tradition of the tribe had long been shattered, and there was no need to stick to something that did not even exist. Moreover, they felt that the public ownership had already cracked with the abundance of materials, and the private ownership, based on the family unit, could just fill the chaos caused by the complete collapse of the former. After repeated rounds of discussions at the Rune Council's expansion meeting, the opposition and the supporters were unable to reach a consensus on this issue. For a while, the situation was deadlocked. Looking at the two sides arguing fiercely, Becky's thinking was a little sluggish. He really didn't think so much, it was just the desire for possession. However, the concerns of both sides were obviously meaningful, and it was just a matter of whether the views they insisted on were conservative or radical. So he proposed to conduct a survey of the wishes of the people in the tribe, to see how acceptable they were before talking about other things. Since the tribe had only a few people, the investigation progressed very quickly, and the council soon got the relevant results. The general content is as follows. When middle-aged men were asked how they viewed the question of fixed partner, they basically answered it doesn't matter, but when they were asked, are you willing to have, and can only have, one fixed partner, the men's choices were divided. 35% answered no. 45% answered it doesn't matter. 20% answered yes. According to rough statistics, those who answered no were basically the strongest and bravest group. Those who answered it doesn't matter were ordinary trolls of the second level. Those who answered yes were concentrated among some slightly thin trolls. The answers obtained from the survey of female trolls were almost the same as those of men, with similar proportions and similar composition. It seems that strength has become an important criterion for determining the troll's view of choosing a partner. Faced with such a survey report, both the pros and cons no longer sought to completely deny each other's views, but instead came up with a temporary regulation after mutual compromise. The regulations stipulate that, without forcibly changing the tribe's current mating system, a certification channel will be provided for troll groups willing to form a partnership, and the tribe will be guaranteed to widely respect and maintain their choice. Certification and respect maintenance are mainly reflected in the following aspects. First, the two parties willing to marry will swear loyalty to each other under a certain process, and the tribe is obliged to recognize, record and archive this oath. Witch doctors can voluntarily choose whether to make further meditation vows, while ordinary trolls do not have the conditions to make such vows. Secondly, mutual chastity and mutual assistance will become the basic obligations of the two parties, and violators will be despised and punished. Thirdly, no troll may make any form of mating request to the swearing parties, and violators will be offended and punished. Finally, the swearing parties will form a new experimental unit, a family, and are obliged to cooperate with the tribe in sociological experiments in private ownership and raising children. The interim regulations were named marriage law, interim, and Baki and Maya became the first pair of trolls to take the plunge. After several days of preparation, the wedding of the two trolls was held in the former witch doctor's courtyard. They held hands and came to the old witch doctor, who insisted on officiating the wedding. The old witch doctor could no longer speak. He just sat in the center, looking at the new couple with his cloudy eyes. One was a fearless explorer who brought earth-shaking changes to the tribe. The other was the fruit of the tribe's innovation. Now the combination of the two seems to announce the arrival of a new era. I seem to be able to go with peace of mind. Thinking of this, the old witch doctor closed his eyes and left this world forever, leaving the tribal home he dedicated his life to. He left very quietly, so quietly that the other two witch doctors standing on both sides of him, who were responsible for speaking and recording, did not notice it. After going through all the procedures, the two witch doctors completed the legal oath and deep meditation oath under the witness of the participants, and the moment of the dinner. Old witch doctor, the wedding is over. Do you want me to take you back to the house? Baki, who had completed the task, endured the unexpected side effects brought by the meditation oath, walked to the old witch doctor and asked softly. Of course, there was no response. Baki's heart clicked and had a vague foreboding. Old witch doctor, he called in vain and stretched his hand in front of the old man nervously, but he could no longer feel breathing. Baki withdrew his hand. He stood up, looked up at the silent night sky painted warm yellow by the bonfire, closed his eyes slightly, and a long lost teardrop quietly flowed down his cheek. A pair of arms embraced him from the front, hot breath covered his neck, and a female voice spoke with an inexplicable emotion. I'm sorry. After calming down, Baki hugged the other party, smelled the fragrance he had never had before, and comforted him softly. It's not your fault. After a short hug, he said, can you help me call the two witch doctors, Sharp Fang and Coarse Fang? It's time to discuss the old witch doctor's funeral. Yes. Maya agreed and turned away, quietly walking towards the two who were surrounded by a group of trolls. It seems that it was blocked before, so I modified it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42, Funeral and Treehouse. While the people of the tribe were in a frenzy over the wedding, an old man quietly passed away. The deceased is gone, and the living have to work hard for the future. They are obviously very sad, but they still have to think about how to make the most of this matter. The tribe did not have clear funeral rituals before, and they always buried the body hastily on the spot. The Rune Council intends to take this opportunity to thoroughly determine the relevant standards and gather a wave of people's hearts. With this idea in mind, the discussion on the old witch doctor's funeral lasted for several hours, including but not limited to the standards and forms of funerals. When they finished the discussion and dispersed, the carnival outside was over, and the whole tribe returned to peace again. Only the occasional footsteps of the patrol team showed that this was a lively settlement. Baki and his newlywed wife did not return to his residence. It was too close to the old witch doctor's house, and Maya's residence was a little further away. After entering the house, even though the side effects of the meditation contract had begun to appear, the two just hugged each other and lay down very restrainedly. They talked about magic, old witch doctors, politics, and the future. The conversation went from slow to intermittent, and then disappeared completely. Unknowingly, Baki had fallen into a deep sleep. Maya, lying on her side in his arms, looked at her husband's face, which was vaguely ferocious in the dark, and his pair of fangs, that were no less than those of a warrior. She couldn't help but think, he looks like a barbarian, so why is he so different? She was deeply attracted, even though she knew that there was the influence of the oath, but she was happy with it, because this was their common choice. After watching quietly for a long time, Maya leaned forward and kissed her husband's fangs gently, then found a good posture and closed her eyes. The darkness passed quickly, and the morning sun did not slow down its pace due to the slight changes on the earth, and rose as usual the next day. Wake up, it's dawn. In the early morning, Baki woke up to his wife's gentle call. He didn't know when he fell asleep last night, but he swore that this was the most peaceful sleep he had since his reincarnation. In the next few days, almost all members of the tribe fell into grief because of the death of the old witch doctor. He lived for a long time, and there were too many trolls who grew up under the care of this old man since they were born. The funeral of the old witch doctor was designed to be grand and frugal. The witch doctor square in the center of the tribe, which was the small courtyard in the past, was built into a high platform by earth magic. The body of the old witch doctor was cleaned and put on gorgeous clothes that he had never worn before, and lay quietly on a huge bed woven with magic vines. In the eyes of all the people, the witch doctor apprentices, and trolls such as the Archon, surrounded the bed and walked slowly to the center of the high platform. Next, the Great Witch Doctor, the Middle Witch Doctor, the Archon, the Baki and other trolls took turns to give speeches and mourn. They recalled the bitter past of the people, talked about the dedication of the old witch doctor, talked about the stumbling of the tribe, described the bright future, and stated the importance of the present. In short, their sorrow had ended as early as last night. What was being done today was to make good use of every opportunity to make the civilization of the tribe take a step forward. Therefore, today's funeral was more like a show. It became a platform for the three witch doctors, Fang Fang, Coarse Fang, and Baki, as well as a few elite warriors who had opened their minds, these very few cores, to mobilize the emotions of the people and output values. The simple trolls who had never seen so many tricks turned their sorrow into strength and actively devoted themselves to the great construction. Regardless of whether the funeral was utilitarian or not, at least the effect was quite good. Look, within a few days, there were real results brought to Baki. Look, Witch Doctor Baki, this is the multifunctional treehouse for families we designed. The witch doctor in charge of the design of the treehouse, who was leading his small team at the moment, pointed to the giant standing abruptly in front of him and said so. It was a tree about 30 meters high and 6 or 7 meters thick. Perhaps because of the lush branches and leaves, Baki could not see any structure on it that resembled the treehouse he imagined. It's so big, but where is the house? He asked in confusion. Later, after the team's explanation, he understood what kind of tree house this was. Above the trunk is a canopy that is several times larger than other trees. The branches in between have become a kind of imitation vine structure, twisting with each other to form cavities. The largest cavity in the center of the canopy is the master bedroom, designed specifically for couples, with a large double vine bed. Near the top of the canopy is a meditation room, which is filled with vine tables and chairs, and seems to also serve as a study room. There are several independent spaces in the front, back, left and right directions of the canopy, which can be used as restaurants and warehouses as needed. Seeing this, although I was surprised that this thing was so different from the treehouse I imagined, but to be honest, Becky didn't feel any surprise. It was nothing more than the stacking of plant spells, full state acceleration, partial vinization, and limited range twisting. Apart from being more troublesome, there is nothing worth mentioning. As for the result, it is hard to say whether it is beautiful or not. It is really not practical in terms of functionality, space utilization, lighting, etc. In addition, such a huge size can only accommodate a couple, which is two. However, it seems a bit early for him to define it. First, the leading witch doctor showed him the control ability. They designed a modular and controllable mode for each room of this tree. For example, if you want to experience a romantic night under the stars, you can continue to hold your wife, recite a short spell, and simply swing your fingers, and the entire master bedroom or a single bed will be lifted up, and you can have a battle in the wilderness with the sky and the ground on the treetop. In addition, although the original position of the master bedroom is buried deep in the center of the tree canopy, there is no need to worry about lighting. Not only can it be achieved by moving the main body of the house, but also by using simpler commands to open the windows in different directions so as to take in more light. The meditation room on the top can also wander around in the tree canopy, and for the privacy of meditation, it is designed to be split. And the most unique thing is that they have designed a relatively practical washroom with an excretion channel directly connected to the root system, a water supply system also responsible for the root system, and a series of ventilation and cleaning functions. Looking at the wash basin, shower facilities, and toilet in front of him, and thinking about the various functions he had shown him before, Becky found himself really attracted. The designer said that this was not over yet, and led Becky out of the bathroom, stepped over the suspended ladder and passage made of vines, and returned to the master bedroom again. He pointed to the depressions on the four walls of the house and said, "We have changed the output of some trees. They will secrete oil into this groove, and thin branches that can ignite fire will extend from it. They can be ignited with spells or fire. Although the output is not much, it is enough to support the lighting of all the houses." When he finished his general introduction, he added with regret on his face, "It's just a pity that this kind of complex structure house seems to be only suitable for us witch doctors to live in. Almost all of its expanded functions are just decorations without the assistance of spellcasting ability. Indeed, it's a pity. But from what you said, there are simple structures? Yes, abandon the complex road system, integrate most of the functional houses into a whole, and only separate them from each other with walls and doors inside, leaving fixed lighting openings on all four sides. At that time, the tree house as a whole will not need to be so tall, and the tree canopy will be reduced several times. In extreme cases, it can even support planting a tree every 15 meters. Isn't this a sky villa and a single family house in the sky? Apostrophe. Chapter 43 Shortcut in the speaker. The group of trolls returned to the tree. The young witch doctor stretched out his palm and pressed it on the thick trunk. He muttered a spell, and the whole tree began to tremble. The dense leaves became smaller and completely penetrated the branches. The small branches merged into the big branches and then disappeared at the top. The trunk became thinner and shorter, and the roots also gathered from the soil and returned to the bottom of the tree. Finally, the whole tree disappeared, and where it had stood before, a solid cube of 3 meters squared appeared. As you can see, we have given the witch doctor version of the treehouse a certain portability function. Although 3 meters square is still a bit large, there is no hope of it becoming smaller in the short term. And now, it's yours. Huh. That won't do. Your gift is too hard for me to accept. It doesn't matter. I've thought about it. In the future, I will give a tree house to every couple in the tribe. You just happen to be the first one." Hearing this, Baki silently looked at the new witch doctor in front of him for a long time, and he lowered his head in trepidation. "Tell me, who came up with this cunning idea? The Fang witch doctor?" The young troll scratched his fangs awkwardly, showing a silly expression, trying to get away with it. Baki shook his head and said with a warning in his tone, "Whether it is the Fanged witch doctor's idea or your own idea, I would like to advise you to put aside these little thoughts. This method of promoting policy implementation through guidance is indeed feasible, but using cleverness to bypass the opposition is wrong. Maybe you can succeed this time, but what about next time? In the future, will the factions holding opposing opinions follow suit when they can't convince you? If this goes on, all trolls will begin to seek shortcuts. Is there any need for the tribe's deliberative system to exist? Short-term convenience may also be a destruction to the foundation in the long run, which will not be worth the loss in the end. Even, forget it, you go and tell those supporters that this matter must be decided by the Rune Council before it can be implemented." "I see. Yes. I'm sorry." The young witch doctor restrained his smile and responded with some frustration. "What about this treehouse? Take it back. If the proposal is passed, you can bring it back to me." "Okay. Well, go ahead and remember to tell me what I said." The young witch doctor nodded and left quickly. As for the cube, it was left there. The tribe had not yet developed the profession of thief, so there was no worry of losing it. Looking at the back of the little guy, Blade Fang's eyes were thoughtful. Before, he didn't dare to say his worries completely. Once this loophole was opened, leaving them with the idea of taking shortcuts, it might become a political tradition, deeply engraved in the genes of the troll society. However, there is actually another shortcut: killing. Once they realize it, all naturally derive the idea of killing all the opposition. The butcher knife can never be taken back. The bloody storm will linger in the troll politics from then on, becoming an eternal curse. Of course, he was just a half-baked law student in his previous life, without any experience in ruling. So, to put it bluntly, these ideas are just conjectures, and there is no basis for whether they are right or wrong. Maybe it's too much of a fuss, but there is no teacher here to correct him, so he can only grope his way forward. On the second day, the Rune Council held a full meeting. Before entering the formal meeting process, the Fanged witch doctor applied to speak, to the surprise of all the trolls. He walked to the center of the meeting hall, stood on the simple podium, faced the participants sitting around in a stepped shape, and described his previous little tricks in a very frank manner, and apologized for it. What the Fanged witch doctor said made me feel deeply. A shortcut that is convenient for a while may become a rotten wood that destroys the foundation. I will take this as a warning from now on. After hearing his statement, the opposition led by the Great Witch Doctor expressed their indignation at his cunning behavior. But after all, the incident did not happen, so there was no need to pursue it relentlessly. After this matter came to an end, the meeting was supposed to start, but the absence of the old witch doctor had a certain impact, and no troll knew who should speak first. So, the Great Witch Doctor stood up, although there is no relevant title. In previous meetings, the old witch doctor did become the host. In fact, now that he has passed away, we need a member to replace his role in the Rune Council, and formally determine the relevant title, authority, and selection method. The trolls naturally had no objection to this, and spoke on this motion in order of seniority. In the end, they jointly determined the title of speaker, as well as the relevant election method, authority, etc. Nomination system, simple majority election principle, responsible for presiding over routine standing member meetings. Participants are heads of various committees plus government executives, convening the Rune Council plenary meeting, heads of various committees plus members, plenary member meetings, all plus government executives plus trainee congressmen. And having the right to make decisions on deadlock motions. It is indeed a very simple set of plans, but many things can only be realized when the time comes. So, for the time being, this is the only way. In the nomination phase, Baki became the only nominee, and was unanimously approved. This gave him a headache as he did not want to participate in specific affairs. It was not that he wanted to lie down and do nothing, but he really felt that this thing was too energy consuming. He wanted to refuse, but thinking of the previous shortcut incident, his mind changed a little. Perhaps I can be a safety bolt. If I can leave a good political tradition, maybe there will be less blood and rain in the future. With this idea in mind, Baki was officially elected as the first and second speaker of the Rune Council in AIM. According to the current Rune Council training rules of the tribe, to a certain extent, he is the real helmsman of the tribe for a period of time from now on. Ahem. Thank you for your trust. Then I will propose the first motion after taking office. The trolls looked eagerly, wanting to see what kind of topic this legend would bring up. Well, I ask the parliament to confirm the term of office for the position of speaker and propose 10 years. Hearing this proposal, the two witch doctors, Sharp Fang and Coarse Fang, and the current first Archon, who were unknown to the other trolls, all showed relieved expressions. Although Baki himself may not realize it, he actually has absolute prestige among all the knowledgeable people in the tribe. Although Sharp Fang, Coarse Fang and other trolls trust him very much, they are still worried. They are worried that this young troll will go the way of tyrant and traitor, as he once said. Now, seeing that he has taken the initiative to set limits for himself, they are really relieved. P.S. I want to emphasize that writing about parliament, speaker, etc. does not mean that I think they are absolutely correct. I also read novels myself. To be honest, I'm a little tired of reading domineering emperors. I want to write something different and don't want to create another godlike wise emperor. I ask readers to spray, but please spray gently. Chapter 44. The Illusion of the Young Council. After Baki's proposal was passed, the witch doctors, in view of the fact that the parliament was beginning to get on track and, in order to highlight the unique status of the speaker, immediately cast a spell to transform the parliament hall in the envious size of other trolls. The new parliament hall is not small in size. Overall, it is still arranged in a stepped shape with high outside and low inside around the central podium. But there have been major changes in the regularity. First, the innermost circle on the left will be the first floor for formal witch doctors, and now there are only less than 10 of them. Above it are the positions of more than 30 trainee witch doctors, who sit together in 2s and 3s. Secondly, on the right, the innermost circle is temporarily vacant, and above it are the government executives headed by the chief executive. And the stairs facing the lecture hall are allocated to more than 40 trainee congressmen selected from literate people. In addition, a single seat is set up high behind the central podium, which will become the position of the rune speaker from now on. After the transformation and everyone sitting down, the parliament opened again. According to the newly established rules, Baki banged the gavel on the speaker's seat to signal the start of the process and asked if there were any new proposals. Fanged Witch Doctor raised his hand to signal, and after obtaining the speaker's permission, he stepped onto the center podium to explain his proposal. The content was exactly the policy of encouraging marriage by dividing rooms that they had previously planned to bypass the parliament and implement without authorization. Next, the first round of opinions was entered. First, the Fanged Witch Doctor and his supporters made orderly speeches under the chairmanship of the speaker. Then, the opponents such as the Coarse-Toothed Witch Doctor also stated their respective reasons for opposition. Next, the second round of opinions was entered, and the supporters of both sides supplemented their respective reasons and refuted the speeches of the opposition. After that, the third and final round of opinions was entered, and both sides would make final explanations and supplements to the refutations of the opposition in the previous round. When all 3 rounds of debates were completed, the motion entered the formal voting process. Previously, although the 2 opposing opinions each had their supporters, when it came to the final voting stage, in fact, only the official witch doctors who were less than 2 palms long actually had the real decision-making power. The rest of the trainee witch doctors, archons, and literate trolls attending the meeting only have the right to suggest and express. No matter what opinions they hold, they can only express them in the previous 3 rounds of statements. Therefore, for informal witch doctors, this process is more like a learning process. Of course, if their speeches are indeed meaningful and impress several neutral witch doctors and turn them into supporters of their own opinions, it is equivalent to determining the direction of the policy in disguise. Nowadays, there are 8 official witch doctors in the tribe except Baki. The pros and cons of this proposal each had only 2 votes at the beginning, and the remaining 4 belonged to the neutral camp. This camp division is only for individual cases for the time being. There have been many camp reorganizations before according to different issues discussed. However, although the 2 witch doctors, Sharp Fang and Coarse Fang, have a good relationship in private, their opinions in the parliament are always at odds with each other. Baki knocked the gavel, looked around at the trolls in front of him, and finally set his sights on the 8 witch doctors in the innermost circle. Witch doctors, the final vote is about to begin. Since the people have handed over this sacred power to the Rune Council, please cast your vote based on public spirit. Now, those who agree please raise your left hand, and those who disagree please raise your right hand. After that, the gavel was knocked down again, indicating that the witch doctors could raise their hands. The 8 witch doctors raised their hands, some resolutely or hesitantly, especially Maya. She didn't know which side Baki supported. After she looked at Baki for help many times without success, she slowly raised her left hand. When she saw that all the witch doctors had voted, Baki raised his vote, his left hand. 7 votes in favor and 2 votes against. Then, I declare the motion passed. Your Excellency the Chief Consul, we will set up a temporary committee to be responsible for this case. Please organize members to join as soon as possible. The temporary committee will only provide guidance for 120 days, and then it will be handed over to your cabinet. Understood? Mr. Trainee Representative Muaya, the one who was in charge of the barbecue before, he has grown up and has no qualifications as a shaman. Please select a group of trainee representatives to join the temporary committee. Okay. After receiving the promise from both sides, Baki turned to the shaman side and asked if there were any new motions. After receiving a negative answer, he announced the adjournment. As for the formation of the temporary committee, it will be transferred to the closed-door meeting of the official shaman later. After finishing a series of affairs, Baki felt quite accomplished, and also vaguely felt that it was quite interesting and quite simple. In the still simple troll tribe, his feeling was not wrong, but it was only temporary. Baki, who had not deeply understood the various drawbacks of the modern parliament, confidently hugged his wife who was still sulking, and his mind was full of the upcoming battle to open the new house. He took the new house away, selected a site and planted it, and then spent almost the whole night to coax Mia. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Baki, who woke up 4 lights later than usual when he slept alone, lay on the rattan bed with empty eyes, looking at the blue sky and white clouds above, and deeply reflected on the decadence of indulging in sex for several consecutive days. A soft moan sounded from his ear, a long leg was hung around his waist, and a finger was vaguely drawing circles on his chest. The gentle atmosphere of the land of tenderness once again intoxicated him. It was not until 14 o'clock in the afternoon that Baki fled from the bedroom and went into the new meditation room. Several days of busyness came to an end for the time being, and the side effects of the oath were basically understood. It is called a side effect, but if you think about it carefully, it is actually not a bad thing. First, the 2 parties who made the oath will feel happy when they are together. Second, which is a little more troublesome, the desire for each other will be magnified by 1 level, but it will not be endless or even affect the sanity. Now, it is time to start the research on energy level that was interrupted by many accidents. After the lesson of the last coma, Baki decided to use deep meditation more cautiously. However, after realizing the universality of energy conversion in cells, he became much bolder in controlling this aspect. He drew a diamond with a side length of about 3 centimeters in the center of his chest, which was specially used for electronic fluctuations. As the fluctuation repeated under his control, the diamond began to emit a faint purple light, which looked mysterious and beautiful. Time passed, and after 6 or 7 hours, the afternoon sun shot a straight beam of light through the window on one side of the meditation room, which happened to fall on Baki and hit his chest. Instantly, the sea of consciousness seemed to emit bursts of roars, and the movement in the chest area became more intense, accompanied by the sound of crackling. Several flashes of arc light burst out and disappeared from the dark purple area. This change seems violent, but in the end, only a few atoms became bald heads without electron layers. For the whole, this damage cannot even be effectively perceived. Therefore, Baki did not stop meditating, but observed more seriously. The various procedures of the parliament are very naive, because the protagonist does not know much, and will gradually improve in the future. However, the description of the parliamentary discussion process should not be expanded in detail. In addition, it feels like it can't be expanded. Is it because too many corners are written? Thinking. Please vote. Please read. I will update twice a day steadily. By the way, is it appropriate to update 4,000 plus in 2 updates of the new book? Is it too much or too little? Chapter 45. The Wolves with Different Progress. This sudden feedback made Baki realize that electronic fluctuations seemed to have a direct connection with light. Therefore, he replanned his meditation time and environment. In terms of time, of course, it was set in the daytime when there was plenty of sunlight. In terms of environment, the meditation room with an open roof and the new tree house was just right. In order to coordinate, the time of the daily routine closed-door meeting was also adjusted to be arranged after the sun sets at 12 o'clock in the evening. Because the research conducted by Baki is equivalent to paving the way for all witch doctors, the other members are very supportive. In the following days, at least 15 hours of meditation were guaranteed during the day, and the remaining 9 hours were filled with tribal affairs that were not convenient to adjust to the night. At night, in the first half of the night, he handled parliamentary affairs, and exchanged spells with witch doctors, and communicated with his wife at midnight, and they both went to bed in the second half of the night. Fortunately, there are 48 hours a day here, otherwise no matter how great the time management master is, he may not be able to play this set of operations. Hard work pays off. After such a busy life for more than half a month, the research has made significant progress. First, the diamond-shaped area on the chest was fixed, and Baki no longer needed to meditate to maintain it. Second, under the premise that the frequency of electronic fluctuations did not decrease, the heat dissipated in the area was significantly reduced, and the energy conversion activity was obviously significantly improved. Baki guessed that perhaps, because of the energy enrichment, the body automatically improved the energy conversion function of this part of the cells. In addition, during this period, he paid attention to the macroscopic changes in his body every day, carefully observing whether there were adverse reactions such as aging and weakness. Maybe the time was too short, maybe it didn't exist in the first place. In short, the body's feedback was normal. He could run and jump, and Midnight's performance was as brave as ever. Under such circumstances, Baki decided to add another diamond-shaped area as a test field. As for where to put it this time, he decided to ask Mia's opinion, because his wife seemed to be extremely fascinated by the diamond on the chest. It was another midnight, and Baki consulted on the location of the test field. The result was not unexpected. Mia was willing to give instructions. Baki gladly accepted this. After enjoying some early consumption, the 2 trolls who finished their healthy exercise fell into a deep sleep. Just as Baki continued his further research, a group of special visitors attracted the attention of the tribesmen. It was a small pack of wind wolves, which patrolled around the tribe all day long. Due to a certain degree of overlap in ecological natures, wind wolves have always taken the initiative to stay away from the troll community. And now this abnormal situation has made the tribe very nervous for a while, fearing that some unknown abnormality has appeared in the depths of the Black Forest. Sitting and waiting for death has never been the quality of the wild trolls. The tribe dispatched several teams of full-time warriors in training to drive them away. However, the subsequent news did not seem to be so bad. This wolf pack has only 6 members, and each of them is so thin that the scars on their bodies seem to be from their own kind. Under the protection of the warriors, the Chinese witch doctor approached and observed the area and found that this was the embryonic form of a new wolf pack, consisting of 2 subadult male wolves that failed to compete for mating rights, and 4 rebellious young female wolf strangers. They seemed to lack ecological niche experience. After discovering that there were no medium and large upper competitors around the tribe, they regarded this place as a safe area and prepared to build their own new nest. After getting this result, the Chinese witch doctor Fang Fang did not choose to expel them, but instead thought of raising them. However, he knew that wolves were fierce creatures. If they were captured and domesticated forcefully, they would probably only get corpses. So the Chinese witch doctor thought of another way. Now that the tribe's food reserves are quite sufficient, Hunters only need to have a big hunt every few days or even longer. However, in order to achieve his goal, the Chinese witch doctor decided to change this model slightly. After obtaining the approval of the parliament, he organized a group of hunters separately and started hunting like the previous daily hunting model. It's just that the scale is much smaller, with only 10 members in the hunting team. Every time they caught prey, they would throw some of it to the wolf pack's haunts. The first time, the feeding point was quite far from the tribe, and the wolves thought it was free and picked it up without hesitation. The second time, the feeding point was slightly moved forward, but it was still quite far from the tribe, and the wolves still picked it up without much hesitation. After repeatedly feeding at these two locations, the wolves almost developed the pleasure of freeloading, and the witch doctor moved the feeding point forward a long distance to an area with obvious traces of tribal activities. This time, the wind wolves were much more careful. They kept sniffing the residual smell in the air, taking 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. After a long period of entanglement, they carefully took the prey away. Next, there were several more adaptive feedings, until the wolves completely adapted to the smell of trolls in the air, and then they moved the feeding point further. In this way, after this tug of war lasted for several months, the feeding point gradually came to the door of the tribe, and the wolves had basically adapted to close contact with this harmless tribe. Until one day when the hunting team set out to hunt, they found that the wolves actually took the initiative to follow them. The warriors were not afraid of this. A single troll was much stronger than a single wind wolf, not to mention that they had a total of 10 hunters at this time, more than this group of wind wolves. So, they let the wolves follow them, wanting to see what these wind wolves who had eaten free food for several months wanted to do. The answer soon appeared. A wind wolf circled in front of the hunting team and kept trying to express something by walking and stopping. It seems to ask us to follow. The team members whispered in confusion. Okay, let's follow and see. Be careful. The captain of the hunting team thought for a moment and gave such an order. Understood. The strange team, walking through the black forest that seemed particularly gloomy even in the daytime, gradually deviated from their previous habitual path. This continued for more than 10 hours, and the leading wolf in front finally slowed down. The leader wolf crouched down and groped forward with slow steps. The other wolves scattered around also fanned out, showing a faint ambush posture. The captain just signaled the team members to stop and prepare to see the situation, but he didn't expect the leader wolf to immediately look back, as if silently urging them to catch up. The captain still asked the other team members to stop, and he followed quietly, intending to explore the situation first. He bent down, took off the steel and wood javelin on his back, held it tightly, and kept a posture ready to throw it at any time, and slowly moved to the left of the leader wolf. Seeing that there was nothing unusual in the wolf pack, he dispersed some of his attention and looked forward. Although the deep forest was dim, he still saw something. It was a group of animals he had never seen before, vaguely showing large patches of brown in the darkness. Judging from the outline, they had large heads, thick necks, and sturdy bodies, about 4 meters long, and shoulder heights similar to those of adult trolls. Some of them seemed to have a pair of large horns that spread out in the syncline, looking extremely majestic. Seeing this strange group of animals consisting of about 30 or 40 units, the eyes of the hunting captain gradually lit up. He unconsciously reached out and bit the leader wolf. Its hair was unusually smooth and soft in the feeding environment, and it felt perfect. The leader wolf did not make any radical moves, but just dodged with some disgust. It stared at the shadowy group in the distance with a slight expectation. A low tremor came from its throat, as if urging it. The captain presumptuously guessed the mentality of the leader wolf, and felt that it seemed to be saying, "Hurry up. That one is the most delicious, or we can't beat it." Chapter 46, Hunting. The captain still remembered that the witch doctor in the tribe once said, it is possible to domesticate herbivorous animals that live in groups with a fixed leader. In this case, these big guys cannot be simply killed and transported back. Thinking of this, he waved his hand and signaled the team members to follow. After the other 9 hunters quietly gathered around, he pointed to the forest in the distance and said, "We have to find a way to bring these big guys back and let the witch doctor see if we can raise them." The team members also saw the group of creatures at this time. One of them seemed smarter and immediately understood what the captain meant. They are so big. There will be a lot of meat if they are killed. It would be great if we can raise them. After he finished speaking with drooling, the remaining hunters suddenly realized it. Recalling the endless food output of the two animals in the tribe, they became excited. Yes, you are really smart. Catch them. Take them back. Okay, our team is not enough. Swift Fang, Fiercer Fang, you quickly return to the tribe and bring the news to the chief. No, to the chief officer. Ask him to send more hunters. Okay. The two trolls who were designated left and soon disappeared from the sight of the trolls. The speed of returning will be much faster than when they came. In a few hours, they will be able to bring support. We can't just wait. We must drive them towards the tribe as much as possible. Swift Fang, you take 4 hunters and go around from the left, but don't attack. Make a noise to drive them away. The rest of the hunters follow me. We will drive them from the other side. Remember, don't be too fierce. Just make a small noise. Don't be too panic. They are big and there are so many of them. We can't stop them. After a simple assignment of tasks, the 8 hunters divided into 2 teams and began to go around from 2 directions. Not long after, some movements began to be heard in the distant forest. The big guys who were chewing branches and leaves calmly heard the noise and began to dig the soil with their 4 hooves in panic. However, even so, they did not run away randomly, but turned their heads to several companions who occupied the most abundant food, as if waiting for instructions. These guys who were relied on should be the leaders. They had exaggerated horns and shoulder heights of up to 4.3 meters, which were considered real giants. Obviously, these leaders were not very panicked. They raised their heads alertly, scanned the surroundings with their fist-sized eyes on both sides of their heads, and listened carefully to the movement. After a while, the leaders gave up eating, took small steps with their hooves, and scattered to the periphery of the tribe, vaguely protecting the large group in the center. The big guys in the inner circle seemed to be appeased, and their mouths, that had stopped, started to move again, chewing and moving under the guidance of the leaders. However, perhaps because the danger was not obvious, the leaders did not urge them too much, so overall, they moved quite slowly. Rather than avoiding, it is more like a courteous transfer to the low-risk unknown. The wolves, who were watching this scene in confusion, did not know how to act, so they had to look at the leader wolf and wait for it to make a decision. The leader wolf observed quietly for a moment, carefully observing the action patterns of the stupid big trolls. After a moment, it seemed to understand something. The low bark from its mouth was like an instruction, and the wolves scattered and left after hearing the sound. Since the wolves had been following the captain, he immediately noticed the movement and immediately showed a look of worry. He was afraid that this group of wind wolves would act on their own and destroy the plan to drive them away. The direction of the wolves scattering was basically the same as that of the trolls, but they ran to a place farther away. Suddenly, there was a wolf howl coming from the outer circle. While the wolf howls were one after another, there was no clear sense of rapid encirclement, but only created an atmosphere of wolves foraging nearby. Now, the big guys who were originally slow and only moved their feet occasionally finally stopped eating and sped up their pace. The captain, who saw this scene, suddenly realized that the wolf pack understood his plan and was cooperating with the hunting team. A group of smart guys. It's not in vain to raise them. The wind wolves were obviously more suitable for this task, and the main force of the drive soon became the wolf pack. The hunting team withdrew from the most front line and shifted more attention to the vigilance of threats from other parties. For example, other wolf packs that felt provoked by the sound. For example, other troll tribes. The former didn't matter, and few wolf packs dared to hunt openly in an area so close to the tribe. But the latter was not necessarily the case. Although this area was only about a day's walk away from the tribe, since it was not their traditional hunting ground, some small tribes might notice this and occasionally come to pick up some bargains. Fortunately, the worst situation did not happen. Several lantern hours passed quickly and steadily. When it got darker, the large group of hunters from the tribe finally arrived. As they were not clear about the situation on the scene, the main force stayed a little further away. Only the Swift Fang, who had returned earlier, and a few trolls followed the wolf's howl and came over. What's going on? What are the wolves doing? The people who came over were the leaders of other hunting teams. They looked at the strange formation of prey wolf troll with some surprise. That guy's chasing prey. Let's see how far it can go. Maybe we can cooperate with each other in the future. The captain said to the wolf leader, who looked over here vigilantly because of the noise. Okay, then we will lead the team to the outer periphery. After a while of observation, the several hunting captains who arrived later also nodded in agreement. In this way, the captains discussed the direction they were responsible for and left in a hurry. The former captain walked up to the wolf leader, who was no longer on guard, and whispered to him, "Work harder. If you do well, you'll have enough to eat every day." The wolf leader snorted in disdain, but his movements were extremely agile, and he rushed out with a whoosh. Does he really understand? The captain looked at the direction where it disappeared, thinking uncertainly. When Baki finished his meditation for the day, it was almost dusk. Walking out of the unusually conspicuous treehouse, he found that there seemed to be few living creatures on the street today. Isn't today a concentrated hunting day? Where did everyone go? He finally met a troll who was chopping frozen meat on the road, and he asked the question in his mind. "Oh, I heard there are big animals. Most of the hunting team went to help, but they should be back soon." "Oh, new big animals? Where did they leave from?" After the troll pointed out the direction, Baki looked at the sky and realized that there was still some time before the next appointment. He nodded and walked towards the entrance of the tribe. Coincidentally, when he was about to reach the entrance, he suddenly heard a noise, including wolf howls, warriors' shouts, and unknown low roars. He took a few quick steps, bypassed a few houses that blocked his view, and saw the scene outside the newly built gate of the tribe. There were 30 or 40 guys that looked like American moose in his previous life, but were several times larger than he remembered. They were surrounded by nearly 100 hunters and guards. Among these moose, the largest ones with exaggerated horns on their heads seemed to be the leaders. They were anxiously roaring at the outermost edge of the encirclement. They tried to appease the panicked compatriots while preventing the trolls from getting closer. On the periphery, the trolls formed groups in hunting teams, exerting pressure from all directions continuously, and intended to go a step further to separate the leaders from the large group in the inner circle. The two sides continued to fight at the team level. The trolls who didn't want to kill, and the moose leaders who didn't want to escape alone were in a stalemate for a while. At this time, a moose that was even more majestic than the other leaders had a hazy red light on its head, and launched a charge quite abruptly. On its path, there was half a team, about 6 strong trolls. From slow to fast, it seemed to be just a moment. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared from sight, and appeared again, after crossing nearly 30 meters, appearing where the half-hunting team stood before. Dang, dang, dang. Several consecutive roars. The fence surrounding the tribe seemed to tremble under the impact of heavy objects. Looking at this momentum, if it wasn't made of new steel and wood, it would definitely be able to make a hole in it. At this time, the trolls who reacted looked in the direction of the sound and saw several hunters sliding down the fence. Before Baki could even begin to appreciate the strength of the moose chieftain or to check on the injuries of the troll that was knocked away, a red light once again appeared on the top of the moose chieftain's apostrophe head. Chapter 47 Hunting 2. Without time to think, Baki, who had already rushed to the front, raised his hand and cast a vine spell. The thumb-thick vines drilled out from the ground at the moment when the moose leader had not yet fully started and tightly wrapped around its legs. The vines were extremely tough, although they showed a tendency to break in just a moment. Even such a short time was enough for the trolls to dodge. Who, thank you, witch doctor. The startled troll hunters quickly made way for the front and thanked Baki gratefully. While Baki nodded, his finger movements and spells did not stop, constantly filling the gaps that were about to break. He took out the only gap that was not enough to insert other spells and shouted, "Hunter team, let the warriors join in." Since the previous warrior concept was split, although there were hunters and warriors among the middle-aged trolls, the combat effectiveness of the trolls has not decreased because of the militia training that has been carried out. On the contrary, there has been a significant improvement in organization and other aspects. For example, if this order was given in the past when everyone is a soldier and everyone is not a soldier, they would not be able to understand and execute it in a short time. Now, with the incomplete order issued by Baki, the various hunter teams quickly reacted and gathered in small teams, thus leaving gaps between teams. Seeing this, the off-duty warriors who had originally intended to help, but were blocked from the outside circle from the beginning, took this opportunity to insert themselves into the front row from the gap, and surrounded the hunter team instead. During this time, Baki had been using vine magic to slow down the pace of the most majestic moose. This guy was too strong, and a vine would break after a short time, which left Baki no time to cast other spells, and he could only passively continue to make up for the vine magic. Fortunately, the warriors quickly filled in. At Baki's signal, they tried to hold their shields close to the moose leader, trying to compress his movement space. However, the other secondary leaders saw this scene, and did not let the situation develop. They turned and attacked one after another, as if they had the intention of rescuing him. Seeing this, the warriors holding giant shields first separated most of them, and went around the back, using spears to slow down the speed of the attacking moose. After that, they intersected their shields, to form a shield wall, and gradually pushed them back, by advancing step by step. Another 3 teams of warriors quickly inserted into the gap created by the advance of the majority, and with their backs safe, they pressed the moose leader with shields layer by layer. In this way, the moose leader had no room to display his power, and could only struggle with muscle strength. But the troll warriors were not easy to deal with in terms of strength. What's more, they were now tightly pressed against it from 4 sides, and into layers. At this point, the big guy was finally completely suppressed, and Blade Fang finally had time to use complex spells. He did not make any fancy choices, but only improved on the basis of the primary vine technique. Under the stacking of runes, monster vines as thick as wrists and as strong as steel and wood were created, which entangled the moose leader in circles, dragging him to the ground in his unwilling eyes, unable to get up again. Just as they were dealing with the moose leader, most of the warriors who had been separated earlier also formed a new encirclement with the addition of other hunters. The encirclement continued to compress inward, to limit the maneuvering space of those second level leaders, and prevent them from attacking the formation by accelerating movement. In addition, the wolf pack also worked very hard. Under the leadership of the head wolf, they took the risk of jumping onto the backs of the moose many times to harass them, and by constantly creating chaos, they prevented the moose from exerting force in the same direction. When Blade Fang and the 3 teams of warriors who cooperated with him arrived, the 3 parties had already cooperated in batches to suppress the remaining moose in a circle that almost made them close to each other. This was much easier. Blade used the soles of his feet as the origin, to create vines of the same strength as before, and controlled them to drill into the deer herd, and then tied up, and pulled out the secondary leaders one by one. After repeating this process, he finally got rid of all the tough ones, and the remaining ones were not a big deal for the warriors and hunters, and they could catch them one by one. In fact, if the trolls did not have the idea of capturing them all alive, it would not be so troublesome to hunt these 30 or 40 moose. At least, this was true for the warriors equipped with giant shields, heavy throwing spears and other weapons, and hunters with relatively backward weapons and almost only traditional short throwing spears might have some trouble dealing with them. But it was just a trouble, and the traditional hunting method was enough to kill most of them in the pursuit. Let's get back to the point. Not long after, when the other witch doctors heard the news, and came one after another, with the addition of vines, the capture of the remaining moose was soon declared over. Afterwards, under the expectant gaze of the trolls, the Fang Witch Doctor stepped forward and carefully observed the reactions of the captured mooses, and combined with the hunter's stories, he came to the conclusion that they should be able to be domesticated. Knowing that their hard work was not in vain and that there would be new meat to eat in the future, both the hunters and the warriors cheered. In such a warm atmosphere, Blade thought of another way to use them besides eating, riding. Perhaps this will be an opportunity to light up the troll cavalry. Whether they can ride and how they can ride will be affected by many factors. For example, when carrying the heavy troll warriors, how much endurance can these mooses have left? But it's always right to try. Even if there may be a lack of room for large-scale cavalry in the forest, small-scale reconnaissance cavalry may be feasible. Perhaps it can be used to expand the scope of the explorable area. Thinking of this, he slowly walked towards the most majestic moose leader. When it came to him, Baki squatted down, reached out and stroked its neck, trying to get closer to them. However, the result was known from the increasingly angry look in the leader's eyes. Failure. Perhaps, in the eyes of the moose leader, who was restricted and fell to the ground. This might be a humiliation. What are you doing? Maya squatted beside him and asked in a pleasant voice. I want to ride it. Maya, who only knew the word ride was used in the boudoir, looked at her husband with shock and sadness and vaguely felt ashamed. Why? I can't. What are you thinking about? I mean, I'm thinking about whether we can let the warriors ride these guys to run and fight. Baki interrupted his wife's random thoughts with a smile and motioned her to step back a little. Maya, who had never seen or heard of the concept of proper cavalry, but had seen the trolls in heat with animals, was still skeptical at this moment, but she also cooperated and stepped back a little. Seeing this, Baki looked directly into the eyes of the moose leader and slowly untied its restraints one by one. Since he decided to keep the moose as a cavalry mount, he couldn't think of a more effective way other than conquering their leader. It's a little late, but here is the second chapter, and I'm begging for votes in various ways. Chapter 48, Fight. At this time, the interaction between Baki and the moose leader finally attracted the attention of the other trolls. Several witch doctors approached him to ask about his intentions, and only then did they learn about the possibility of cavalry. With an expression of "it turns out that this is possible," the witch doctors followed Baki's instructions to organize the warriors and hunters to form a circular shield wall to create a venue for him. The shield-bearing warriors stood in the inner circle, using the huge shields in their hands that could almost block most of their bodies. To form the main body of the wall, the hunters, who were more in number, used their arms to support the backs of the warriors in front of them in the outer circle as wall support. When the shield wall was formed, most of the restraints on the moose leader had been removed. It stubbornly supported its body with its four hooves. As soon as it could stand up, with anger flashing in its eyes, it stared at Baki in front of it and began to struggle, trying to break free from the remaining vines. You may not understand me, but you are wise. Look around. Look at my majestic warriors, my friend. It was unknown whether the moose leader could understand Baki's words, but his eyes followed Baki's gaze and looked around. So, he became quiet, but this quietness was not a kind of resignation. The anger flashing in his eyes was still clear, and his fighting spirit was still burning. Looking at his appearance, Baki was not angry but happy. The wisdom of this beast was promising. He maintained the last restraint on the moose leader, and he kept staring at his eyes, and stepped back step by step until there was a distance of nearly 40 meters between them, and then he stopped. At this time, the shield wall was 4 or 5 meters behind him, and he could clearly hear the warriors' heavy and powerful breathing. The trolls that made up the inner and outer layers of the wall also understood what was about to happen from this gladiator-like preparation scene. This witch doctor, who has always been known for his wisdom, was actually preparing to fight this big guy. Strong is beautiful, big is good, strong is right has always been the truth followed by the tribe. Even though, with the rise of witch doctors in recent years, this belief has been vaguely shaken by external forces. But the ice is not formed in a day, and this concept of honor and courage is still deeply rooted in the hearts of the trolls. So at this moment, they became excited. The warriors held their weapons and stretched out from the top of the giant shield, hitting the steel and wooden shield desperately, making waves of steel hitting each other, and the hunters also started to shout in coordination. Dong 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 he. Dong 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 he. Dong 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 he. The sound gradually formed waves, rushing far into the forest, and the shock scared away a group of animals of all sizes who did not know what was going on. In this wave of sound, the moose leader in the circle was even more affected. But it was not frightened. Instead it became more and more anxious and angry. Its four hooves kept digging the ground. Its muscles gradually tightened. Its head tilted to aim its horns at Baki. In short, it seemed ready to knock its opponent to death at any time. Baki, who was threatened like this, naturally could not be unprepared. Originally, he planned to ride it like taming a wild horse, but considering the uncertainties in endurance and effect, he finally made a head-on decision and chose to beat it with the most direct way. Since Baki made such a choice, he naturally had his reasons. First, witch doctors are a balanced profession with synchronous development of physical and mental fitness, and Baki is the best among witch doctors, which already gave him a first-class basic physical fitness that is stronger than most warriors. Second, after working like a cow and a horse in recent months, his body has been added with a few purple skins, and his overall quality is almost comparable to that of the top first ruler. Third, although the effectiveness of similar spells will decrease when they are stacked, they will still be greatly increased. Brute force spells, giant force spells, local hardening, agility blessing, buffering. He used almost all the physique bonus type spells and defensive spells that the tribe had without a weakening period on himself. After all the preparations were completed, Baki untied the last restraint of the Moose leader from a distance. The leader, who had been ready for a long time, did not hesitate, and immediately released his innate ability. Baki knew that he would definitely not be able to avoid this, so how could he be unprepared? Many of the spells he prepared before were to deal with this first blow. Moreover, he also pinched the last moment before untying the restraints and blessed a delayed effective spell to prevent the most likely situation. When the red light lit up as he expected, Baki, who was relieved, actually lowered his head and rushed straight forward. In the blink of an eye, two figures of almost the same size collided with each other in the center of the field, closer to the starting point of Baki. Boom. The dust spread out from them. After a thunderous sound, the figures retreated to different distances under the reaction force. The one farther away was undoubtedly Baki. The huge difference in weight and acceleration put him at a significant disadvantage in the collision. The figure flew straight up until it hit the shield wall hard and stopped. This time, it even caused the shield wall to shake. The cheers of the warriors and hunters stopped involuntarily, and all the trolls looked at him worriedly. Some of them, such as Maya, who had a bad temper, wanted to help. After grabbing the weapons, they were finally persuaded by the witch doctor's interception and the subsequent reactions of Baki and the Moose leader. Baki didn't die immediately after hitting the giant shield and bouncing off. The adverse reactions such as dizziness, caused by the head-on collision, were eliminated by the delayed awakening spell. He only took a moment to stand up. The trolls seemed to be inspired by his resilience. The cheers that had stopped before rang out again and soon became one. Baki didn't have time to respond to this. He knew that time was not on his side. Not only did the spells he cast have their own shelf life, but even the charge of the Moose leader would soon reappear. Baki understood that this was both a crisis and an opportunity. The crisis came from the fact that he could no longer be immune to its charge as he had been before, almost without injury, because he no longer had time to prepare so many disposable protections. As for the opportunity, earlier, when he was at the entrance and exit of the tribe, he found that the Moose leader would have an extremely short period of stiffness between two consecutive charges. At that time, he seized that time to cast the vine spell. Although he decided to give up the obvious external spells and not use vines to contain the guy this time, in order to convince him there were alternative strategies available. In short, he must not let this guy successfully launch a second charge. Seizing this brief opportunity, with the help of a few agility and speed enhancing spells such as Wind Walk, he immediately rushed to the Moose leader, whose stiffness had ended and whose head was already showing signs of red light, and at the critical moment, he jumped up and threw a full strength swing punch at its forehead. The Moose leader staggered after being hit, and although he managed to stabilize his body and not fall to the ground, the red light on his head was successfully interrupted. This was not the end. After all, the Moose leader was still fine. Baki jumped up again and threw a left swing punch, hitting the opponent's head to the lower left. Then, before the opponent landed, he used his waist and abdomen to connect with a knee strike, pushing the Moose leader's head to the upper left. The collision between the knee and the head gave Baki an effect of accelerating his landing. The moment one foot touched the ground, he turned around at the fastest speed to use the force to kick back. His body, which had been blessed by many spells, did not disappoint him in the limit. The left leg that supported the ground was strong and powerful, and the waist and abdomen, which were the core of the movement, were even stronger and more powerful. In the end, all the strength was gathered in the right leg, and it hit the Moose leader's head hard, which was actively welcoming. Bang! Boom! The Moose leader fell down, and its heavy body was driven to the ground by its own head. Baki, warrior. Baki, warrior. Baki, warrior. Cheers rang out one after another. Amid the uniform shouts of the warriors, his name, accompanied by the last light before nightfall, resounded throughout the Black Forest. I've been busy these 2 days, so the other one will be later. Please vote. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49. Forget about everything. The recognition and support from the people came so simply and warmly. This was very different from the witch doctor's wise troll, who always had reserved admiration, as if separated by a layer of gauze. This feeling made Baki open his arms involuntarily and greedily bathed in the cheers of the surrounding warriors and hunters, accompanied by their eager eyes. After a long time, he barely suppressed the throbbing in his heart and leaned over to look at the moose leader, who had not been able to stand up for a long time. He looked directly into the other's eyes, stretched out his hand and gently stroked its neck, and said slowly in a gentle but threatening voice, "Submit, or die." The moose leader's eyes at this time were obviously very complicated, with reluctance, fear, and hesitation. Without getting a response, Baki's hand slowly moved along its not so long dark red mane to its roaring neck. His finger slightly applied force at both ends and embedded in the gap between the neck muscles and the throat. For the last time, surrender or die. This time, the moose leader responded. It opened its mouth, stuck out its tongue, and gently licked Baki's knees. Without a doubt, it chose to surrender. Baki, who got the answer, relaxed the strength of his fingers and whispered a spell. Suddenly, accompanied by a faint green light, low-level healing and awakening spells were attached to the moose leader's head. Soon, the moose leader regained its ability to move under the effect of the spell. It slowly supported its body with its 4 hooves and stood up again. During this period, the two sides kept looking at each other, and Baki could clearly feel the struggle and hesitation in its eyes. It seemed that the recovery of its physical condition made this big guy have some other thoughts. Baki just looked at it quietly, waiting for its final choice. If the moose leader showed hostility again, he would give up the idea of recovering. The quality of cunning is obviously not suitable for a relationship like a mount partner, which may have to depend on each other on the battlefield. Fortunately, the moose leader did not repeat itself in the end. It lowered its head and gently rubbed Baki's shoulder, as if to express its closeness. So, Baki did not hesitate for long, and with both hands, he straddled its back. The moose leader just jumped twice in response to the initial stress, and stopped struggling after calming down. Baki went a step further, and he created 2 soft and tough vines. In the leader's somewhat nervous reaction, he gently stroked and comforted, while controlling the vines to form a cage, just around its facial bones. The cage extended 2 extension lines backward as reins. Baki tried to gently pull left and right, slowly shaping it as a whole to a degree that would not cause pain to the target. After that, he tapped his feet lightly, followed the angle of the reins, and guided the moose leader to move forward slowly. While walking, Baki seemed to have found the feeling of riding a horse in his previous life. The intelligence of the mount saved many training steps. He sometimes accelerated, sometimes slowed down, and sometimes pulled the reins to make him stand up. During this time, the cheers of the trolls became louder as he moved. Baki was so excited to see the prey that he controlled his new partner to start running. They ran around the shield wall again and again. Finally, he stopped in front of the shield wall and raised his hand to signal the trolls to be quiet. The 4.5 meter high mount, carrying the nearly 3 meter tall majestic troll, created a sense of shock of 1 + 1, 2, and the trolls immediately quieted down. In the sense of majesty brought by the noise turning into silence in an instant, Baki said loudly, "From now on, your tribe will be called Moose, and you will become the closest partners of the tribe. And your bloodline will continue for thousands of years and spread on every piece of land I step on." His words seemed to be spoken to the moose, and also seemed to be spoken to all the trolls. Afterwards, Baki controlled the mount to start again, and the scene became a sea of cheers again. Riding to Mia's side, he pulled his wife into his arms, and amid the friendly laughter of the warriors and hunters, he headed towards the tribe between the shield walls that consciously made way. At this point, amid the enthusiasm of the crowd, and under the complicated or thoughtful gazes of a few smart trolls, the series of events brought about by the new beast finally came to an end. The noisy and cheerful scene was left behind, and the slightly cool wind after night fell, hitting back his face during the high-speed running. His heart, which was held to a high place by the cheers of the crowd, gradually cooled down during this process. At this time, Baki, who had calmed down, recalled his extremely abnormal series of words and deeds just now, and frowned slightly. In his arms, his wife, who was looking at him with a burning and admiring gaze, raised her hand to wipe away the wrinkles between his brows during the bumps. "What's wrong? Why are you unhappy?" "Nothing, I just figured out something." Yes, from his behavior, he finally understood why so many people, knowing the risks, would still charge towards the throne of the emperor without hesitation. Can I really resist that kind of temptation? Is that really wrong? In his mind, all kinds of questions rose up involuntarily. Baki husband. The external voice broke his chaotic thoughts. He lowered his head, looked at his wife's puzzled and expectant eyes, chose to put all the previous things behind him, picked her up, and jumped off the running moose. Who cares? I just want to have a clear conscience, and we'll talk about the future later. Thinking of this, he gave the moose an instruction to act at will, and hurried back to the tree. House that looked particularly majestic in the generally low and simple. Then, he threw his wife on the bed, and climbed up himself. Fuck. After a light hour, he looked at the sky outside and finally realized how much he had forgotten about everything. He almost missed the routine meeting scheduled for the first half of the night. After some self-examination, Baki quickly broke free from the entanglement of the person who was still not satisfied, and urged him to put on his clothes quickly. After that, they rushed to the conference room together. Although they woke up in time, they were already prepared to be late when they arrived at the conference room and found that all the participants had just arrived. After asking, they realized what they had overlooked. The group of 30 or 40 moose was not just about catching them. A series of follow-up matters such as comforting, giving water, feeding, and making pens had to be arranged by the witch doctor. Especially the last one. It was necessary to coordinate the venue and use magic to create a deer pen that could at least enclose them. This was not a simple task that could be completed by a single witch doctor in a short time. They also spent a lot of effort to complete it with the collective wisdom and efforts of all parties. Thus, after arranging all these things, time was dragged to this moment. Baki was a little embarrassed to learn about this, and expressed his deep apology. The witch doctor smiled and said it was okay, and also said that seeing Baki and Maya happy every day, they all wanted to get married. So, in the usual harmonious atmosphere, this regular meeting started as usual. At the meeting, they analyzed the differences in the overall performance of the warriors and hunters today, and discussed the future training direction. In addition, they also talked about the application of the wind and wave group, the arrangement of several new fixed partners, and the addition of the armament tree used to produce giant shields and other weapons. When these questions were over, the witch doctors reported their progress in the research of magic. It was not until nearly midnight that all the things finally came to an end, and the witch doctors returned to their respective residences in the dark. The second update was caught up. Hoo-hoo. As usual, I ask for votes, although I don't know what the votes are for. Will more votes increase exposure? Chapter 50 Army. After the warriors were separated, the tribe built an army composed entirely of full-time warriors, but the number was small, with only 125 members at most. Although Baki was not a military theorist in his previous life, the developed internet society provided him with a lot of fragmented knowledge. This knowledge may not be systematic or perfect, but it is better than the natives of these primitive communes, and it is enough to support the training of such a small number of teams. So, he mixed what he knew with the content of his imagination and conjecture, and formulated a set of organization plans and training methods for the tribe that seemed to be quite reasonable. In terms of organization, a squad is composed of 5 warriors, and a troll is elected from the inside as the squad leader, which is considered the most basic combat unit, and 5 squads will be combined into a squadron, and the squadron leader will be elected from each squad leader. As for going up, it is envisioned that 5 squadrons will be combined into a brigade, and the brigade leader will be called a centurion. Now, the squad and the squadron have basically taken shape and started joint training, but the high-level battalion has not yet started formal reorganization, so the position of Centurion is naturally out of the question. The reason is that in theory, the Centurion needs to take on command tasks that are far higher than the squad leader and squadron leader, and it is not easy to be competent. Therefore, the specific form of its appointment made Baki hesitate. Should it be internally recommended by the grassroots of the army like the squad leader and squadron leader? Or should it be directly appointed by the higher level? In other words, internal recommendation and recognition by the superior are parallel. However, there is no rush to decide this. The tribe now has only such a battalion, so practice first. After talking about the organization, let's talk about weapons. Each warrior will receive a square steel and wood shield that is 3 cm thick and can almost block a strong troll. In addition, 8 heavy throwing spears that are as thick as wrists and more than 2 meters long will be distributed as secondary weapons, and the main weapon is a 1.5 meter long steel and wood heavy sword. Originally, Baki also proposed the idea of using axes, guns, swords and other main weapons, but they were gradually abandoned in later practice. It's not that they are not easy to use, but when the output of the weapon tree is seriously insufficient, the more versatile heavy sword has become the most suitable choice. Therefore, the equipment combination formed by the giant shield, heavy throwing spear and heavy sword has become the standard for warriors now. In terms of weapon materials, although steel and wood are lighter than the steel in the previous life, this combination is definitely not light. It is also thanks to the fact that all the warriors are strong men and strong women with a height of nearly 3 meters. Otherwise it would be impossible to arm them. As for the training method, since Baki didn't know much about the battle formation at first, he just chose to copy the set of things from the university military training, based on the considerations of obedience and holisticity, that is, the formation, housekeeping, etc. In general, the effect is not bad, and it has restrained their previous excessive freedom. As for the battle formation training, after selecting the weapon combination and organization, they began to slowly try and improve. In summary, although Baki has always been involved in the affairs of the military to some extent, he has been more involved in some major construction projects away from the grassroots through his name on the training committee and the Witch War Integration Committee. But this situation has changed since the day of the fight to recapture the moose, and his interest has obviously shifted to the military. After that, almost every few days, Baki would go to the training ground of the warriors. There, he tried to practice battle formations with the warriors with shields and spears, and also fought with them after training. Of course, he never used spells in the fights with the warriors, but even so, he still relied on his outstanding physical fitness to win the title of warrior, and was full of pride. In the training, he first replaced the position of an ordinary warrior, and planned to start from the most basic part. The training of long-range aspects is relatively easy. From how to hold a shield, to how to march in a line, from stopping to prepare a spear, to throwing in batches, the difficulty may be the grasp of the accuracy of throwing the spear. But the trolls seem to be very talented in this area. After trying for 20 or 30 times, Baki, who had not received any relevant training, could throw it properly. The next melee part was a very troublesome task. From holding the shield to meeting the enemy, to resisting the impact, to attacking, each aspect had its own difficulties. Baki took a long time to adapt, and then he initially learned how to attack forward through the gap of the giant shield without affecting his teammates, or being affected by his teammates. Although it was only initial learning, Private Soldier would not be back his position on the battlefield after all, and learning to this extent was enough for him. He was exposed to these just to better understand the operation mode of the battle formation at the grassroots level, and he did not really want to become a skilled veteran. So, he then conducted several drills in the positions of squad leader and squadron leader, and gradually became familiar with the battlefield responsibilities of these two positions. Finally, he also tried to assume the expected command position of the Centurion, and learned to operate the battle formation in the army from an overall perspective. After all this tossing, it can be said that he was quite satisfied overall. Perhaps in terms of hunting, this form of organization would appear rigid and inefficient, but the imaginary enemy of the army has never been the prey, but the trolls of other tribes. He felt that when those scattered hostile trolls faced his strict formation and sophisticated weapons, they would definitely be destroyed. Now, there is only one problem. There are too few. Such a small number is really too small. But with the current food supply capacity of the tribe, this is already the limit. If you want to go further, you need more surplus food, and surplus food is linked to productivity. At present, when the output of fruit trees and animal husbandry is not enough to replace the status of hunting, the best way to increase productivity is undoubtedly to expand the population. Thinking about it carefully, the current population problem has almost begun to restrict the development of the tribe in all aspects. Whether it is the expansion of the army or the increase in the number of witch doctors, the progress has been delayed because of the population. However, the troll's fertility is not too outstanding, so the natural growth rate is not enough to keep up with the tribe's progress. In this way, filling the population from the outside became the only solution. Although Baki had always mentioned words such as conquer and expand, as if he was about to embark on a journey. But every time he had such an idea, he always thought about preparing more fully. As a result, the tribe has hardly made any moves in this regard over the years. It was not until the bottleneck was really put in front of him that Baki realized that preparation would never be full. Action has come to the point where it must begin. I couldn't sleep at night, so I just got up and wrote. I'm going to go to bed after posting this chapter. The second update will probably be in the afternoon. Please vote for encouragement. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.